Night. A large building of the Quinshan Psychiatric Hospital. Starlight streams through the window into one of the rooms. The night air ripples the curtains. Something seems to be happening in the room. On a hospital bed lies a man bound with an electric wire. Contrary to the situation, his face is calm and serene, with a slight smile. Another guy with long white hair and a joyful gleam in his eyes is holding two ends of a wire. He's going to plug the two ends of the wire into an outlet to fry the wire-bound man. Despite seemingly facing death, the man on the bed is just as calm and serene, claiming that everything is right. The moment the wires are plugged in, a sound is heard. A guy with white hair sits next to the outlet wearing a hospital shirt and pants. Doctors take a guy with black hair to the hospital. The guy has significant injuries. His hair is disheveled. His skin is burned. Following the doctors carrying the patient into the ambulance is a figure with white hair. He asks to take him along, saying his sick friend can't last without him. After that, he begins to pretend to be a doctor, takes the stretcher with the patient in his hands and begins to give orders to the orderlies. The doctor can't stand it and tells the orderlies to pick up the second patient too. Checking in at the hospital won't hurt him. Overhead, watching this whole scene from his office, is a figure in a suit. The head of the clinic, Shi Hao, he begins to remember all of his patients. One of them considers himself an astronomer who proved that the Earth is actually shaped like a cube. Another considers himself a doctor who has invented a remedy that allows men to get pregnant. The head of the psychiatric hospital reflects that although all these people are sick, at least they have a decent profession. But there are two people who stand out even among the mental hospital patients. The electric shock was so strong that it left a distinctive burn on the bed. Inside the ambulance, the procedures continue. John wants to stick a needle in his comrade's head. Thoth responds extremely calmly, with the same slight smile, stating that it's very clear in his mind. John states that the reason for this is his acupuncture technique, but the one with the needle in his head starts talking about a certain circle he sees that welcomes him into the system. The morning on Taishan Mountain was also turbulent. A huge crater from an explosion or impact from a huge creature. Wild animals are fleeing from a terrifying fiery creature, a glowing silhouette shaped like a fox. They don't manage to escape far, however. A blow from the tail of the fire demon sweeps them away along with the people who happen to be nearby. A report on the explosion at Taishe Mountain during which level 8 demons appeared. An ambulance speeds past the booth where this report is being shown, taking an electrocuted victim to the hospital. A red light on the operating room door illuminates along with the words, "Surgery in progress." During the operation, a screen hangs in the air that says the man's strongest system has found the master, but there are problems in his mind. A picture of preparation for surgery. The doctors realize that they have been taken in by their old patient, who is constantly injuring himself severely. The patient suffered second-degree burns, and doctors are stabilizing his blood pressure. The victim is going to be seriously anesthetized, and surgery is going to begin as soon as possible. But when the doctor brings the anesthesia mask up to his face, he starts to say that he feels really good now. With a nonchalant look, he declares that the electricity has cleared him. They don't need to anesthetize him. They just need to trim the burned skin. One of the doctors loses his temper at this, unable to contain his anger, stating that the patient's burn is the result of his stupid actions. The patient just as nonchalantly asserts that he possesses a non-human mind and pain only hardens him. When the mask is brought to him again, he declares that in no way does he want to be given anesthesia, or he will not pay for the treatment. The doctor, however, simply shuts him up, putting an anesthesia mask on him in a quick, graceful gesture. The boy says he will resist the anesthesia with the power of his mind, but soon falls asleep. Images from the patient's childhood. Lin Fan, at the age of 10, he hits himself on the head with a hammer, claiming his head is made of steel. His mother, shocked beyond belief, drops the phone from her hands and jumps up on the spot, her hair standing up. After another attempt by the boy to mutilate himself, she shows him to the doctors and reads a long report on his condition. At this time, Fan pulls his mother's dress and asks her to throw him down from the 15th floor to open the 2 vital points in his stomach. The report includes the phrase that her son is not a danger to others but is prone to self-harm. Lin Fan is placed in a psychiatric hospital in a VIP room, despite his claims that he is healthy. Nowadays, in Lin Fan's room after the operation, John is eating a banana. He tosses a banana peel into a trash can, while his companion lies on the bed and stares blankly into the void. Lin Fan says he is getting better and asks for another acupuncture session. John happily agrees, stating that he is learning a new acupuncture technique. At this time, The orderly in the ward is engrossed in the phone and does not notice what is happening. John, clasping the needles between his fingers, declares that he has mastered a new acupuncture technique, universe level. He diligently starts sticking needles into his wardmate's arm, blood spurting from the puncture sites. Afterward, with genuine childlike interest, he asks Fan how he's feeling. He claims to hear some voices in his head. This makes Gene very happy. He is sure they came about by using a technique from the acupuncture manual. John asks what those voices said to Fan, who begins to answer. But before he can speak and passes out, the appliances next to his bed start beeping. Hearing the beeping of the devices, an orderly runs to the bed. He realizes that the patient's condition has worsened and in desperation calls the doctor. Paramedics rush into the room. They are about to take Fan to the emergency room. His arm is in needles and his heart is beating very fast. One of them, seeing the criticality of the situation, shouts for the chief physician to be called. In the operating room, a screen with a circle over the guy's body appears again, and it says that Fang has gotten the strongest martial arts guidance. At this time, the chief physician, exhausted from the night duty, his soul almost leaves his body. The doctor declares that he is very tired, his face looking very shrunken. He says he is very sleepy. Instead of his eyes, we see 2 dark spots. But he still really wants to eat, at which point his facial features become even more emaciated, and he begins to resemble a skeleton. Here he takes out a lunch prepared by his wife. The very sight of the lunch gives the doctor strength, and the picture seems to be flooded with golden light. The lunch does look appetizing. In the eyes of the hungry doctor, it seems to be bathed in a golden glow. The doctor begins the long-awaited meal. With chopsticks, he drops the first bite into his mouth. Finally, he can eat. A man is passionately eating lunch while sitting in front of his computer. The air around him is literally filled with the smell of flowers. The door is opened by a nurse in a pink uniform. She literally runs into the office, saying that a patient has self-mutilated. The doctor's face freezes in bewilderment for a second, still holding his lunch sticks. In anger, he throws his long-awaited lunch on the floor, resentful that he has to work again after a long shift. The nurse, frightened by the anger of the head doctor, states that their profile is simply not suitable for treating such patients. In the light of day, the Quinshan Psychiatric Hospital building looks even more majestic. Someone knocks on the clinic director's door and asks to come in. A young man with an envelope in his hand peeks through the door and wants to clarify if the purchase order for 1 grave is still in effect. The clinic director, drinking a hot drink, states that the order can be canceled. He received a call from the clinic informing him that Fan's condition is fine. When he is told that the cemetery superintendent will demand a corpse as evidence next time, he reacts calmly. Stating that he has only ordered and canceled a grave for a patient 60 times is a bit of a shock to the young man. The head of the clinic nonchalantly continues to sip his drink, but at this time the bell rings. The person on the other end of the wire indignantly yells that it's hard to save a man's life if he's trying to kill himself time after time. He wonders if the psychiatric clinic is bullying him. His whole body permeated with anger that releases like the eruption of a volcano. Li Lai Fu, vice president of the hospital where Fan was treated, slaps his hand on the table in anger. Shay calmly calls out to the young man with the envelope who was about to leave and asks him not to cancel his place in the cemetery just yet. This once again shocks him. He is maximally embarrassed. The vice president of the clinic says the patient has been causing trouble for them time after time, and he will bring him back to the clinic himself after the surgery. He doesn't agree to look after the patient yet, claiming he's a danger to other patients. In anger, he even says he'll tell him to cut the guy up into pieces and bring him back to the clinic in that form if he's not taken back in one piece. He taps the table once more, showing that the patient has pushed him to the limit, and he is willing to do anything to get rid of him, even violating medical ethics. Ending the conversation, he throws the telephone receiver on the table, indignant at the manner of dialogue of the head of the psychiatric clinic. At this time, the red light on the surgery door is on again. Surgery is in progress. Under the doors of the surgery, a frustrated John lies on chairs, pondering where he miscalculated. He looks like a big kitten when he lies on his back and moves his paws. People who pass by whisper that the man is crazy. The mother hurries to get the interested child away from the dangerous man. John looks at the needles clamped between his fingers and decides he needs to try his technique again. He theatrically thrashes around in a seizure and calls for the nurse, foam coming out of his mouth. The doctor performing Fan's surgery says that when Lee called him to this clinic, he promised him that he could improve his level by participating in complex surgeries. The doctor's face is darker than a cloud. He says he didn't know at the time how complex surgeries could be. But after operating on this patient 48 times, I finally realized. He breaks down and starts crying, tears streaming from his eyes. The nurses immediately start wiping his sweat and tears and tell him to pull himself together. At this time, the screen again appears in front of the patient and offers a choice as to whether he or she wants the reward of improving the rampage once. As damage is noticed in his mind, the choice will be made for him. The countdown to rebuilding his body begins. The evening news on the screen in the hallway reports that the National Guard managed to defeat a level 7 monster, but many of the creatures managed to escape. Fan is wheeled to the ER after a successful surgery. The surgery was a success. The nurse is awfully happy about it. The vice president of the clinic, sitting in the car, asks to hurry up. He can't wait to get rid of such a problematic patient. The ambulance driver tries to take his seat and says that the vice president doesn't have to drive the ambulance himself, but Lee dismisses him. The nurse says there is another patient in the hospital who needs to be taken to the psychiatric clinic. This pisses off the vice president. He doesn't intend to waste a second before taking Fan back to the clinic. The nurse catches up with the ambulance and hands over the mask of Dr. Wang, the doctor who did Fan's surgery. Lee looks at the mask in horror and sees that there are words written there in blood. On the blood-stained mask, the words "I'm out of here" are written in blood. The head of the mental hospital brought his hands together in a gesture of prayer. He asks Buddha for a favor to keep the most troubled patient from returning to the clinic. But a second later, a braking ambulance squeaks by the clinic gate, which somewhat shakes Mr. Shu's faith in Buddha. An orderly rolls out a stretcher with the operated Fan. At this time, the head of the psychiatric clinic approaches the car, his look full of friendliness, followed by 2 orderlies running after him. Lee looks at Mr. Shu warily. He can't wait to get rid of Fan and Jenny. Shu says with a smile, portraying the usual concern for the patient's health, that he's afraid Fan's wounds will open up again. He reminisces about their friendship with Lee and, still smiling, asks for help. The vice president of the clinic grows gloomy. He realizes what his friend's request will be, and that it does not bode well for him. When Mr. Shu asks to hold Fan in the clinic some more and observe him, Lee's face turns gray, and a shiver runs through it. The next second, he falls to his knees with a loud thud. With open mouths and bulging eyes, 2 terrified orderlies watch. Kneeling down, Vice President Lee begins his speech, leaves whizzing past, emphasizing his determination. He asks his friend not to ruin his hospital. Because of these 2 patients, the best doctor of his clinic had a nervous breakdown. Mr. Shea realizes that with his gesture, Lee has ruined his entire plan to press their friendship with Lee and keep the dangerous patients away for a while longer. Lee continues his theatrics. He claps Shea on the shoulder and calls him brother. Before Shea can even remember, he puts his other hand on his shoulder and tells him that if he doesn't say anything, he'll consider it consent. Toth doesn't have time to find an answer for Lee, just stands there with his mouth open as the vice president delivers the end of his tirade. Before anyone can remember, Lee jumps into the ambulance and drives off. He yells that he doesn't need the stretcher and can keep it. Still shocked by what was said, Mr. Shea and the 2 orderlies stand next to the stretcher and watch the ambulance drive away. Lee hurries away from such dangerous patients, turns sharply and shouts words of farewell from the car. She is still silent. The orderlies behind his back still in shock at what happened and waiting apprehensively for the head of the clinic to react. Finally, Shea sighs heavily. He realizes that his plan has failed and he will have to take care of 2 particularly dangerous patients again. He shows concern for Fan, touches the stretcher with his hand, and asks him if he's feeling well. Fan says he feels just fine, which can't be said for the shocked paramedics. John cheerfully says that he feels great too. Shai replies that's good. With a sigh, he tells the orderlies to take the patients to a room and remember to secure the bars on the windows. As night falls, the hospital lobby is illuminated by the light of electric bulbs. In the ward, a bound John is fidgeting, lying on the bed. He asks Fan to help him free himself. Fan says he doesn't have time for that right now. He's training himself. He's lying with his eyes closed, intensely concentrating on something. Opening his eyes, he claims that in his head, a crazy girl is teaching him fighting techniques, and also that she uttered, "The body enhancement is complete." He could now feel the hot air moving inside his body and that it felt quite nice. His friend is very happy about this. He's sure it's because of their training with Fan that has made the change. A neighbor on the ward confirms his words, saying that the universe-level acupuncture technique and the electricity guide produced results. The friends are happy. They decide to continue practicing. At this time, Mr. Shea, accompanied by 2 orderlies, is watching from the corridor. Mr. Shea looks out the window of the room and notices that the patients are not screaming or pranking this time. The orderlies agree with him, but you can tell by their excitement that something is not right. To themselves, they rejoice that the head of the clinic did not find out that the patients had stolen a hammer somewhere in the hospital. Without learning about the hammer, Mr. Shea, satisfied, leaves, hoping that at least this time everything will go quietly, but not all hopes are destined to come true. The full moon hung in the sky over the city, starlight illuminating the streets and houses. A woman in pink walks leisurely down the moonlit and starlit street. Despite the late hour, she takes her time as she is busy with her phone and doesn't notice the ominous shadow looming over her. The girl only turns around when she hears a loud growling sound. For another second, she doesn't realize what's happening. Her face pales in horror as she sees the creature casting such a terrifying shadow. My hands stop obeying. The phone falls out of my fear-paralyzed hands. A moment later, there is the sound of snarling and 2 rows of the monster's sharp teeth flash. The phone lying on the ground is stained with the blood of an unfortunate woman. She has fallen victim to the cursed creature. John and Fan's room, morning light streaming through the windows of the room. John snoring peacefully. His friend frees himself with his emerging powers, gets rid of the straitjacket. We see that his body has been transformed, with no burn marks or other injuries. Fang wakes up John and releases him from his straitjacket as he had requested earlier. A friend marvels at Fan's transformed body and thinks it's because of their constant workouts. Behind the scenes, the blue circle is unhappy that his efforts are being credited to John with Fan. He claims to have trained Fan alone. In a hospital corridor, a worker is concentrating on fixing electrical wiring. Suddenly, a dark shadow looms over him too. Will he also fall victim to the monster? Shivering, the electrician recalls the dark rumors about the hospital, thinking he will fall victim to a ghost, while a mysterious white hand reaches out to him. A hand with a clap comes down on the electrician's shoulder. From surprise, he begins to scream. John removes his hand and greets the startled electrician as if nothing had happened. He literally radiates goodwill. The electrician calms down somewhat, realizing that what has disturbed him is made up of flesh and blood, but is still frightened. The man is so much like a ghost. He recalls being told about the patients of the sinister ward, who are hardly more dangerous than monsters. John greets the electrician again. The latter realizes it's a patient from the very same room. The electrician, covered in cold sweat, finds the strength to say hello back in a shaky voice. Snatching, taking advantage of the electrician's consternation, a hammer from the electrician's toolbox, Fan pulls his friend's hair. John turns to Fan and in his absurd manner asks if he has eaten. Jean and Fan's friends leave for the ward. Jean waves and promises the electrician that they will see each other again. The terrified electrician realizes he would give a lot to never see these two again. Slightly recovered from his fright, he thinks it might be dangerous to work in this clinic. Reflecting on the fact that if it weren't for the high pay, he wouldn't be working here, the guy opens the toolbox and sees that the hammer is missing. The electrician hears the sounds of thumping coming from the ward. Unable to control his curiosity, he walks toward the source of the impact sounds, the chamber. Curiosity overpowers fear, and he peeks into the room through a window in the door. He sees Jean delivering hammer blows to Fan's ribcage. Startled again, the electrician can't figure out what's even going on. John, noticing he is being watched, turns around and turns to the electrician, his eyes glowing red, blood dripping from his hammer. The electrician runs away from the ward in terror. He runs down the corridor calling for help and screaming that there is a psycho killer in the ward, tears spurting from his eyes. After a while, the orderlies drag him back to the ward under his arm. He resists desperately and screams that he will not return to the ward again. Despite his cries, 2 orderlies drag the electrician toward the ward, followed by a nurse in a pink uniform. In front, with his hands behind his back, businesslike, comes Mr. Shea. Apparently, the electrician is being led into the ward on his orders. Entering a light-filled room without the slightest trace of blood, everyone sees patients peacefully drinking liquid from a sachet. The electrician twists his head around in surprise. He can't understand what happened and where all the blood went. He swears he saw everything. In response to Shu's question, Fang states that he drinks Coke and Jean that he drinks rum. The label on the package reads, soy milk. She sighs heavily again. Another trouble from John and Fan. He seems to realize something is amiss. Turning around to the electrician, he places a hand on his shoulder with absolute calmness and his easy smile. telling him that the man was just imagining things. The victim turns to Shay and says he doesn't like the job anymore and doesn't need to call even if he gets paid more. But the thirst for money overcomes fear, and he agrees to think if paid double, he also asks for his hammer back. Shay, turning to the patients, angrily demands the hammer back to the electrician. John waves his hand, showing that he didn't take the hammer. Fang waves his hand, showing that he doesn't have the hammer in his hands. However, the head of the clinic manages to get Fan to retrieve the hidden hammer. Shay reaches out to the patient and kindly asks him to hand over the hammer. Fang, holding the hammer, however, has no intention of giving it away for nothing. He tells Shu to go over and pick up the hammer, while John continues to twirl from side to side. The head of the clinic, however, realizes that getting so close to such an unpredictable patient with a hammer is dangerous. He orders Fan to throw the hammer at him. For a few minutes they argue, watched anxiously by the orderlies, the nurse, and the electrician. The figures of the head of the clinic and Fan freeze in front of each other, neither willing to make concessions. Shay remembers that it's his birthday tomorrow, and he doesn't want it to be his funeral instead. However, gathering his will in his fist, he agrees to approach Fan and retrieve the hammer. The hospital staff behind Shay's back are amazed at his bravery. The head of the clinic's heart is pounding frantically as he approaches Fan. At the sound of his heartbeat, he reaches out a trembling hand for the hammer. Nothing bad happens. The patient lets the hammer be taken away. The nurse applauds Shay, admiring his bravery, and utters praises. The orderlies are also happy that Shay survived and admire what he did. The hero of the day holds out a hammer to the electrician and declares that it's just a minor problem. The electrician looks at Shay in surprise and sees that taking the hammer from Fan was not so easy for him. Streams of sweat run down the head's face, which he hastily wipes away with a handkerchief. On the TV at the clinic, the evening news is on, and a young girl is talking about a horrible monster that the government is going to ostracize. A gray-haired patient at the clinic claims the TV hostess is his wife. The other man sitting next to him confidently claims it's his daughter. The gray-haired patient puts two and two together and says the other patient is his father-in-law. They hug each other in a kindred way and begin to cry, happy that they have finally found each other. Jean points at the TV hostess and asks Fan if he knows her. Fan says she's that girl of his, obviously referring to the girl in his head. The father-in-law and son-in-law understand this phrase somewhat wrongly and are shocked to hear it. John's face and the hand raised to his chin also express doubt. A young girl undergoes a power level test. The test shows that her power level is 2, and she can't wait to go after a dog-type monster. Xian Yin was confident that together, 4 people with second-level strength would easily defeat the creature. The young men agree with Xian Yin and want to go hunting quickly. The guy with the long hair declares that by defeating the monster, they will be able to show their potential. The elite students from the 4th school go on a monster hunt. John and Fan are sitting on chairs listening to the evening news. The anchorwoman says the date is Saturday, February 29th. John is surprised how it can be February 29th now. He looks at the clock, which shows March 7th. Fang says John's watch is lagging behind, but the latter says it's a luxury watch that costs 100 million yuan. A patient with glasses approaches them. He wants to examine the watch. After examining the watch with a magnifying glass, he claims that everything is in order and just needs some corrections. The watch will last for the rest of the buyer's life. He guarantees it. Licking his finger, the watch salesman declares that the customer has spent 1 million yuan in his shop and he will do the repair for free. He wipes the old date off the clock with his finger and writes the new date with a marker, after which he tells John to check the master's work. The hand shows a painted watch with Rolex written on it and the correct date. In the chamber, John says the seller tricked him and it's a fake watch, otherwise it wouldn't have broken so quickly. Fan takes the soy milk and offers his friend a drink of Coke. His friend takes the milk, thanks Fan, and calms down somewhat. Jolly Jean drinks milk and says cold Sprite is better. Fang states that the girl in his head is talking again. Continuing to drink milk, John asks what she's saying. Fan starts to tell. Before he can finish his sentence, time stands still. The screen informs Fan that to stop this, he needs to complete the mission. To complete the mission, you need to help the founder's heir stop being bullied at school. The room is all in pink colors. There is a plush toy on the bed. Everything sparkles with cleanliness. Fang discovers another person in the body in this room and can't figure out where he's gotten to. He looks in a nice big mirror at his new appearance and decides he has been transported into a girl's body, but quickly realizes he was wrong. At dinner, Fang behaves strangely. The mother of the man into whose body he was transported realizes that something is wrong with her son. Her suspicions are only heightened when Fan drinks a bowl of soup in a volley and praises it. For the first time in a long time, Fang finds himself in the outside world and walks to a stop. He is amazed at the silence after the screams of the mental hospital. Chen Yang's mother tells him to go to school, and since Fang is now in his body, he gets on the bus and goes to school. From his seat, he sees a little girl enter the bus. She gets next to the seated Fan and tries to reach the top handrail, but is unable to do so due to her small stature. Fan gives her a seat, and the girl thanks him profusely for it. At this time, a guy with purple hair and an ear piercing enters the bus. The guy turns out to be John Hao, Chen Yang's classmate. He is surprised when he sees him on the bus. He approaches Fan in Chen Yang's body and indignantly asks why he didn't take his seat. Fan remains unfazed as his classmate takes him by the chin and repeats his question. Seeing that there was no reaction, John asks if Fang wants to be beaten and slaps him lightly across the face. The school bully recalls how Chen used to react to pain when he and his classmates beat him up. He waves his hand in front of Fan's face, hoping to elicit some sort of reaction, but he doesn't even blink. This causes a slight stupor for Zhang. He realizes that something is not right with Chen today. The girl wants to defend Fan and says that she was the one who asked him to give up his seat to her. At that moment, there are screams. A bloodied man runs into the bus. He yells at the driver to go faster. The killer is chasing him. Too late, however. A man with a bloody knife, scaring away a bunch of people on the street, climbs onto the bus. The killer enters the bus and, waving a knife, threatens to stab everyone. In the midst of the frightened people, Fang maintains an equanimity of spirit and declares that the man with the knife is not crazy. That one brings the knife over the girl that Fang had given up his seat to. The weapon flies towards her. She screams in terror. A splash of blood can be heard. It seems the killer's knife has struck the victim. John shouts and points his finger at the horrible picture that was revealed to him. Fang stopped the assassin's cleaver with his hand, blood gushing from his wound. Clutching a cleaver in his bloody hand, the girl's defender calls the killer a monk and asks why he kills people. The attacker is shocked to see the man holding the knife with his wounded hand and demands that the man let him go. Fan continues to hold the knife nonchalantly with one slashed hand. The killer again demands to let go of the knife. The kid demands the same from the killer, so they argue for a while, pulling the knife towards themselves. The passengers on the bus are watching in complete horror with their mouths hanging open in amazement. Maniac is shocked by Fan's behavior. It seems he doesn't know what to do. He gives up. The situation has deeply affected him, and he releases the knife into the guy's hands. Having finished his confrontation with the boy, the killer, fearful of him, begins to retreat back. He falls to the ground, looking down at the winner. The killer asks the guy if he's crazy. People bustle around the stopped bus. Police record eyewitness accounts. Paramedics drag stretchers for the injured. The rescued girl is picked up by her mother. She looks anxiously toward the bus, apparently worried about her hero. He approaches the murderer lying on the floor, who begs him not to come any closer. He is very scared. The schoolboy who frightened him asks if he wants to keep the knife, but the killer, cowering in fear under his chair, says Fan can keep it. Fan gets off the bus. John is sitting next to the bus, with his arms wrapped around his knees, and from shock, he has a bad sense of where he is. John is shocked to hear the greeting from Fan. His imagination begins to paint a horrifying picture. In his imagination, Fang, or rather Chen, whose body Fang had taken over, appears in all red colors with a cleaver in his hand and a crazy smile. In reality, Fang also reaches out to the shocked Zhang's hand. John twitches and trembles. He can't figure out what to do, still at the mercy of his fears. Continuing to shake, he spells out the word hello in syllables, extending his hand to Fan in return. Due to his fright, John doesn't realize that one of Fan's hands is cut, so he can't immediately realize what's so sticky in his hand. Realizing that he has blood on his hand, John is even more frightened. The nurse sees that the schoolboy's arm is wounded, takes him aside and starts bandaging him. She admires the boy's stamina. Fan says that pain is a kind of mind training, and since his mind is strong, he has no problem with it. The nurse is shocked by the schoolboy's answer, but maintains a friendly demeanor. She ponders if the guy is really that weird or if she imagined it. At this time, 2 police officers are leading a handcuffed killer in cuffs past them. The killer notices a guy being bandaged by a nurse. Maniac is startled by the mere sight of Fan and starts screaming. With a scream, he starts to run away from Fan. 2 policemen stop him, Fan and the nurse watching bewildered. One of the policemen approaches Fan and says that his bravery deserves a reward. The police officer says the department will contact the school and commend Fan, but doesn't have time to finish. The boy quickly says goodbye to the policeman and says he has to go to school. He's running late. The law enforcement officer admires the boy's resilience. and decides to remind his son to study harder when he gets home. Still, he decides to run after the guy and tell him he may not go to school today. The cop will take him to the hospital and call the school. Fan shocks the man by laying out his philosophy of pain as a workout that strengthens him. The policeman lets the schoolboy go and realizes that something is wrong with him. Fan walks into Chang's classroom and looks around. The classroom is practically empty. Most of the seats are vacant. He can sit wherever he wants. Fan finds a seat, pulls back a chair and sits down. No one paying attention to him yet. To the sound of the schoolchildren talking, the boy lies down on the desk and indulges in reminiscences. Fan's mother asks if her son can go to school like a normal child his age. The doctor replies that normal children go to school and her son is mentally ill. The same one sits like a puppet on the couch and watches the dialogue. A mother is very upset that her child cannot attend school. A pen is jammed into Fan's hand, snapping him out of a world of hardscrabble memories. Chung's classmate says he crossed the line on the desk and deserved to be punished. She says she warned him that if he crosses the line, she'll hit him, and expects Chang to react to the blow in some way. He imagines how the object of her bullying must react, upset or even crying. The fang in Chang's body, however, has no reaction to the fact that he has a pen stuck in his hand. This puzzles the girl. The class's chief whiner continues to act like it means nothing to him. Annoyed by the lack of response, she decides to push harder. This amuses Fan, reminds him of the jokes that were played on him in the mental hospital. Even more surprised by Fan's words, the classmate continues to press on the pen, though traces of blood are visible on the pierced jacket. She doesn't understand how her classmate cannot react, because she is pushing as hard as she can. As soon as she removes the pen from the wound, blood spurts out and lands on the girl's face. A classmate is frightened and runs down the hallway, covered in tears and stained with blood. The guy with blue hair tells Zhang that the class's chief wimp scared his girlfriend. He tells him not to worry. He'll beat Sina, drag him to the bathroom after class. A frightened Zhang starts telling him to by no means do this. Chen is insane. Zhang's friend is puzzled. It's already clear from Chen that he's not normal. Just look at the way he dresses. Fang walks up to them and extends his hand to say hello as they love playing with Chen. His good-natured face shows no danger at all. Zhang's blue-haired friend decides that Chen must be crazy to think he can just walk up and say hello like that. Zhang, however, stands up and absolutely greets Chen in the friendliest possible way. Zhang's friend picks up on the fear in his behavior and can't figure out what's going on. The teacher comes into the classroom and sternly asks who has learned the poem. The students sit very quietly, for this teacher is famous for her nasty temper. Seeing that there are no takers, she decides to challenge Chen to tell a poem. The blue-haired man is sure that Chen is about to be publicly humiliated. Fan stands up and, without blinking an eye, apologizes for not learning the poem. The other students are shocked at his boldness. How could he say such a thing to a teacher from whom they themselves hide behind books? The teacher is about to start reprimanding the schoolboy, but meets his eyes and hesitates. She suddenly feels cold. She feels that there is something wrong with this student. Perhaps he is abnormal. Chen smilingly asks permission to sit down, his smile having a bad effect on the teacher. Unable to control herself, the teacher, correcting her glasses, allows the guy to sit back down. Fan thanks for the permission and sits back down. No one in the class can understand how their classmate got off so easily. After class, all the students are doing their own thing. A few students are sleeping right at their desks. Some are chatting, some are reading a book. While Fan is squatting by the outlet looking at the key, a bully with blue hair walks up to him and asks what's wrong with him today. He wants to know what Chen did to his friend Zhang and the strict teacher. He puts his hand on his classmate's shoulder. Fang, however, does not react in any way. This infuriates the bully. He is becoming less and less aware of what is going on. In an effort to get answers from Chen, he takes him by the collar and starts to stir him up. But he continues to look at the key. Fan says that practicing with electricity will help them get stronger and wants to stick a wrench in the socket. A classmate continues to hold Chen by the collar and says that he must really be crazy to want to put a key in the socket. But Fan still plugs the key into the socket. Not the smartest thing to do, and not worth repeating unless you're a psycho. The guy with the blue hair realizes too late that Chen's body is indeed the most real psycho in the world. He gets electrocuted. Under the influence of the current, he starts shaking and waving his arms. One of the classmates decides it's some kind of dance. He asks to be taught to dance and touches the back of the electrocuted man and becomes an element of the circuit himself. Seeing several people repeat the strange movements, 2 more high school students want to learn. After a while, the whole class joins in the electric dance. Fang pulls the key out of the socket and says that because the amperage is too weak, his training is ineffective. Turning around, he sees all of his classmates electrocuted. He decides that they are very tired because they have been studying for a long time and advises them not to sleep on the floor to avoid catching a cold. Since he needs to go to the bathroom, he just jumps over his classmates and walks out of the classroom. At this time, a math teacher walks into class with a cheerful gait and humming a tune. Today is his favorite trigonometry lesson. Excited, with a broad smile, he enters the classroom and greets the students. His books and drafting instruments fall from his hands to the ground with a clatter when he sees what's going on in the classroom. The room resembles a carnage. There is not a single living person. The teacher just stands there looking at it all with his mouth open. When he comes to his senses a little, he calls 911. He automatically starts speaking memorized text about trigonometric functions. Only then, when he realizes, he says that all the students are lying unconscious and gives the address. Fan watches the ambulances arrive to take the children to the hospital and ponders how this could have happened. As soon as he stepped away to use the restroom, all the students in the class fainted. Indeed, high school is a cruel place. In the schoolyard, the students discuss the strange incident with Chen's class and the fact that he is the only one who managed to stay out of the hospital. Fang, walking through the schoolyard, hears a woman's voice calling out to Chen from behind a tree. Remembering that he is now Chen, Fang walks over to the tree and asks if his name was called. Embarrassed, with flushed cheeks, the girl comes out from behind the tree. She has some business with Chen. Fang can't understand what they want him to do. These situations are unfamiliar to him. He asks if everything is okay, to which the girl replies that it's about her. She clutches an envelope with a heart behind her back. Someone's hand snatches the envelope from her hand in a swift motion. Mockingly, the guy with the earring in his ear starts asking if it's a love letter. Garanji's boyfriend is the local school bully. Accompanied by 2 henchmen, he proceeds to bully the schoolgirl, asking if the letter is for Chen. Ta asks the bullies to stop and return the love letter to her. Garanji mockingly raises the letter above his head. The girl tries to pick up the letter, but he is very tall. Her height is not enough even if she jumps up. Fang jumps up and, after describing an arc around Tang, takes the letter from him, leaving him utterly bewildered. The school bully in charge says he'll let Chen go if he reads the letter in front of everyone. Fan, with his usual directness, asks the girl if she wants her letter to be read in front of everyone. The girl waves her head. She is upset, tears flowing from her eyes. Fan declares that if the girl is against it, he won't read her letter in front of everyone. Garanji's fist hits the tree trunk above Fan's head with a loud sound. Hovering over Chen's body, he asks if he will read the letter. Fang is about to reply something, but is interrupted by the girl's shout. Fearing for her lover, she asks to read the letter so Chen won't be beaten. But Fan says the bullies can't beat him up, so there's no point in listening to them. This angers Garansu, who doesn't see Chen as a threat and thinks he and his henchmen can easily deal with him. One of the bullies insults Chen, and he's eager to teach the man a lesson for being too much of a bully. Fan mundanely strikes the tree trunk with his left hand where his opponent had previously struck. Fan's blow to the tree trunk causes a crack that literally breaks the trunk. Garen and his minions watch in amazement as the huge tree breaks and falls. The 2 students ran as fast as they could to call the teacher for help. Barely stopping, he is told that Garanji is again bullying Chen Yang at the school entrance. The teacher is furious. As principal, he intends to teach the sternest lesson to Hearn. The teacher and 2 female students rush to stop Garen. The teacher has already rolled up his sleeves. Upon reaching the scene, they see a picture that makes them stand still with their mouths open. Chen hovered over Garen and taught him manners. Leaning on the trunk of the tree he had felled, the 2 henchmen standing bowed before Chen. Chen tells Garen to repeat after him that taking other people's stuff and bullying the weak is bad. The frightened bully turns pale and repeats Chen's phrase exactly. Then he tells Gareth to repeat that if he wants to read someone else's letter, he must ask the host for permission. A startled Garrett looks at the trunk of Chen's fallen tree and repeats this as well. Chen slaps his cheeks with the envelope and says that since he's too skinny, he needs to go home and eat. Scared to death and shaking Garen, Tsu agrees with Chen about everything. After Chen lets them go, Garen and his 2 henchmen quickly flee. The teacher asks the students who called him for help if he has understood everything correctly. When asked if perhaps it was Chen who was bullying Garen Z, the female students nod their heads sharply. Chen holds out the letter to the student who wrote it and asks her to take it back. The teacher and the 2 students watching with darting eyes. Blushing, the girl says that actually the letter is addressed to Chen. Fang, in Chen's body, citing life lessons from John, says he recognized the pink envelope as a love letter. The girl says she loves Chen and asks him to be her boyfriend. Behind the scenes, the principal yells that he doesn't allow any love in the school, and two students try to restrain him. But Fang and Chen's body unexpectedly refuses the girl shocking her. He says his life's goal is to train to become the strongest man in the world. He hurts the poor girl by saying she doesn't deserve him. The girl runs away from the guy in tears, saying he's the one who doesn't deserve her. Fan, watching the girl run away from him in her own way, can't understand what he said wrong. He recalls his roommate's words about not being able to understand the girl. The entire scene continues to be watched by the principal and two female students, calling Fan a loner. Fang clutched the unread letter in his hands, wondering if he had forgotten something. He decides that whatever he forgot about isn't that important and leaves, with the principal in the background dragging two female students away from Fan. Images from Chen Yang's flashbacks. He likes adorable things and is weak, and is bullied and called names at school for it. But there's a girl who appreciates Chen and pays attention to him, thinks he's different. He loves her hopes to one day confess his love to her. Kneeling down, he dreamed of the day she would confess her love to him. At that same moment, he would undoubtedly agree to be her boyfriend. This is in stark contrast to Fan's behavior, who in this situation called the girl unworthy. A large building with a red cross towers over the town. A doctor bent over a sick student from Chen's class, electrocuted to start the operation. He wants to cut his clothes. Hearing that his clothes are about to be cut, the student immediately comes to his senses. He blurts out that the clothes are very expensive. He spent a lot of money on them. After that, he runs out of strength. The schoolboy falls helplessly on the couch. The doctor yells at the patient. The guy's condition is entirely his fault, and after his death, his parents will buy him paper clothes. In the hospital room, the students are discussing what caused them to pass out, and they realize that at the beginning of the chain was Yang Hu Tiang, a guy with blue hair. He resents how the students can blame him if another person put the key in the socket. Yang reveals that he touched Chen, and he said he wanted to stick a wrench in the socket, but he didn't expect the guy to mean it. Blue-haired confidently claims it was all because of Chen. The disciples look around, looking for Chen in the chamber, but he is nowhere to be seen. Then Yang says that Chen is probably in the ICU room, because if he was injured so seriously, the perpetrator of the accident is at death's door in the first place. One of the students nervously suggests that Chen may have died. A silence hangs in the chamber, each of the classmates trying to comprehend the death of the local loser. Students recall that although Chen didn't dress typically, he often gave them snacks, and school bullies missed the object of bullying. Suddenly there is a loud knock, and the students turn to the door. They are trying to figure out who it could be. Some think the doctors have come, others are waiting for the parents. The door opens and Chen peeks into the room, alive and well. The classmates are shocked by the comrade's arrival, for they already thought he was dead, and he looks better than all of them. The culprit of the celebration says he has been looking for them for a very long time. He believes they were hospitalized because they overachieved in their studies. Victims assess Chen's condition. He is completely unharmed and quite cheerful. The one who doesn't get electrocuted pulls out snacks from his bag for all his classmates, fried sausages and a carton of soy milk. Yang wonders what the trick is, how the guy managed to avoid injury. Zheng, still wary, asks Chen to call him brother, asks him not to blame his friend and just give them appetizers. The blue-haired man is shocked at how courteously his friend treats the former bullying victim. School bullies start getting messages on their phones from the task force. Yang stares at his phone, not realizing what reality he's in. The group posted photos of Chen teaching the school's former head bully about life. Hiding his phone, Yang doesn't hesitate to thank the new school boss for the food and the visit. Hospital roof, one of the patients decided to commit suicide. Falling off the building, he wonders how his wife, with whom he has been married for so many years, could do this to him. It's a sunny day. The hospital courtyard is filled with people. Chen shows what the tree he cut down with one punch looked like. At this time, a suicidal man who jumped off the roof flies past the window. Chen's classmates see a suicidal man flying by, but Chen can't understand the reason for their reaction for a while. Noticing the suicidal man, Chen rushes towards him with lightning speed. In a moment, he is already firmly grasping the fallen man's arm. In front of his classmates, Chen confidently clutched onto the suicidal man's arm, using one hand to keep him from falling. A crunching sound is heard, the arm breaking, unable to bear the heavy weight, but Chen pays no attention to it. With a broken arm, he drags the dangling suicidal man through the window of the ward. Everyone in the ward wonders how an ordinary person can do this. The savior asks the suicidal man sitting on the floor the reasons for his act. The man coughs and can't understand why Chen saved him, because he has a terminal illness and will die soon. Wrapping his arms around his head, he tells her that his wife is having an affair, and she has forced him to end the marriage. The savior pats the terminally ill man on the head and tells him that in a difficult situation, one must first cry and then deal with it. The words of the schoolboy resonate in the soul of the desperate man. Tears appear in his eyes. As he continues to cry, he wraps his arms around Chen's leg and snuggles against it. Chen calmly pats the crying man's head with his hand. The orderlies and the doctor run into the room. He is amazed at how the suicidal man managed by some miracle to save. The doctor asks the hero of the story how he managed to do such a thing. At this time, the attendant is led away by the rescued Chen, who still continues to cry. Zheng notices that Chen's body is not okay and informs the boy and the doctor that his arm is broken. Chen is surprised that his arm is broken. He didn't even pay attention to it even though his arm is bleeding. The other children are amazed at Chen's stamina and don't understand how he can be so calm. Chen tells the doctor that he has nothing to worry about. He'll heal himself, and it's not worth wasting time on him. The doctor is very surprised by the guy's words, which means he's used to it, and how he's going to cure himself. Zhang and Yang call Chen their boss and write praise posts about him to the class group. Chen is being operated on. The light of the operating lamp, the boy says it's just a broken bone and no anesthesia is needed. Lying on the couch, he tells the doctors that the pain only strengthens his mind. He says he is familiar with the environment and it is friendly, as are the doctors. The doctor thinks he's probably in pain shock and going crazy. Before passing out from the administered anesthesia, Chen tells the doctors that he has no money. During the operation, a blue screen activates. It informs him that the mission was successful and transports Fan back to his body. He is transported back to his body in the same instant in which he stirred. For a while, he looks around and can't figure out where he's ended up. Realizing he's back in the ward, he remembers that Jen had asked about the voices in his head. He says the voice transported him into a psychopath who likes to dress in original ways. John noted, which is unusual. Freed from Fan, Chen walks into the school gates. He's uncomfortable, looking his head around, wondering why it's taking his mom so long to put the car in. There is a stomping of feet to meet the guy. The local hooligans come out with calm faces. The former whipping boy gets really scared when a whole crowd appears in front of him. Zheng Yang and Garen with 2 henchmen and many other people could be seen in the crowd. The bullies look at their former victim and he panics, not realizing what they want from him. There are so many of them. All the bullies drop to one knee at once, welcoming the new informal head of the school. Chen isn't perplexed. He doesn't understand why the bullies did it. The scene of the guys on one knee in front of Chen looks very imposing. This is watched from behind a tree by a girl who had earlier written him a love message. She decides that Chen is very brave and she doesn't deserve him. Headquartered in the city of MANHUA, inside there is a dispute over the increasing intelligence of the cursed creatures. Tao Jia, a 9th-level yard fighter Liu Heitian, was sure that it was impossible. Mao San, a 9th-level yard fighter Lin Tao Ming, says that if this were true, they would have been wiped out. The man sitting at the head of the table declares that he is quite serious. Yu Qi's court counselor Xu Song ponders what might happen if the creature's intelligence grows. A fist falls on the table, stopping Yu Qi growing intelligence, confirmed the research team. The weather arch fighter Yun Xin begins to ramble on about Buddha and beauty while fixing his luxurious beard. The chairman of the meeting, nicknamed Cyclops, cuts him off as Yu Qi had cut him off before, leaving Xing in complete shock. Cyclops explains that as the intelligence of the cursed creatures increases, a fighter of the same level will no longer be able to defeat the same creature. This means that all people in the city could be in danger. The chairman says they have already alerted the police. Mao San thinks that the lower level can't handle it and will need their help. They can all die, so they should go home and say, "What is to be said we do not learn," because the chairman, raising his arm with the help of his force, seals Mao San into the wall. The chairman, Mian Hai, the leader of the city's special forces, says that if those gathered don't want to die, they should hope new fighters will show up. The office of the head doctor of the psychiatric hospital is noisy. He's being congratulated on his birthday. The hospital staff made him a big cake with candles. They have a lot of fun. The head of the clinic thanks the staff for celebrating his birthday with him. He is very happy to be able to celebrate his birthday this time around. The hospital staff asks the head of the clinic to make a wish. Shay, bowing his head and folding his hands in a prayerful pose, asks that he have a peaceful day today. The orderlies are in a panic, saying that the patients in the cursed ward are trying to hurt themselves again. Shay darkens, thinking she wants to do something bad. John and Fang, along with other patients, have organized a rally. They are holding placards with some schematic drawing like glasses and demanding something. Focusing on the drawings, the orderlies bring them 2 eggs and a sausage, along with a quail egg. Patients continue to hold placards and wave their heads from side to side. They don't seem to want this at all. Asked what they want, Fan again shows a poster with a drawing that looks like glasses, and John shows a drawing with a circle. The hospital staff cannot understand what is depicted in the drawings. They are confused. Finally, the head of the clinic approaches the crowd with a businesslike gait and hands folded behind his back in his trademark manner. The orderlies are very happy that the doctor has finally arrived. They hope he will help sort things out. John and Fang show their drawings to She, who looks at the drawings for a second and says he can't let them have those things. The patients give a friendly glance, seemingly intent on getting what they want at all costs. They fall to the floor, start rolling around, whimpering and waving the drawings around, saying they want what's depicted on them. Realizing that otherwise they will not settle down, the old man, frowning, agrees to their demand. He tells a young orderly with brown hair to go to the warehouse and get them what they want. The one asks, "What do these patients want after all?" In the ward is not quiet again. The sultry couple is practicing hard. The glasses-like figure ordered by Fan turns out to be a 50-pound dumbbell. And similar to the circle is a punching bag. John hangs on it, happy that they can train in the board. With a loud crack, the dumbbell turns out to be broken. The metal cracked like glass. A large hole forms in the punching bag, and the filler spills out of it onto the floor. John tells his roommate that he has completed his training, and that he is now a qualified fighter. Lil Fan, sitting on the bench, replies that it's very nice of him. A dark underground tunnel, a bunch of rats with red eyes are running away from powerful explosions. One of the team that previously went on a monster hunt calls upon the forces of nature. He tells them to gather under him by throwing 3 cards into the air. A huge hellhound is struck by the explosions caused by this technique. The explosions hurt the dog, but he's on his feet and the guy looks small against him. The fighter is approached by other members of his monster fighting team. The girl applies a low-level healing and recovery technique. A yellow-green orb appears in her palms. Using this technique, she treats a guy with a sword next to him. Crosses appear, symbolizing the effect of the treatment. He raises 2 fingers, starting to use his sword technique, the raised fingers glowing blue, matching the color of his eyes and jacket. Using the technique, he launches a glowing sword at the dog. The cursed creature growls loudly as the glowing sword stabs into it. The sword-wounded hound swings a huge clawed paw. The card guy realizes the hound is going to attack. His comrade in a tracksuit restrains the hound above him. A figure in golden garb emerges and holds his paw with his hands. But the hound manages to hit Xiang Ying. She flies a great distance. There is a loud sound as her body crashes into the tunnel wall. The team medic is badly wounded, blood spurting from her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. She sinks into the pool of blood at the spot where she hit the wall, leaving a depression. The sword fighter shouts to his comrades that the blow of the cursed creature is not easy to bear, and Xiang Ying must be led away from here. He uses another technique, and Lightning Bolt throws forward 3 cards. The cards fly forward on blue discharges. They turn into energy. The blue energy blast hurts the cursed creature, but doesn't seem to do any serious damage to it. The hound pushes with all her might against the figure in the golden monk's robes. It's getting harder to contain her. The guy with the rosary beads is covered in sweat. The hound growls, stretching his muzzle in a sinister grin that resembles a smile. The guy restraining the hound is racked with fear when he realizes she was probably restrained all along. A moment later, his body lies chopped in half by the hound's blow. His comrades look at this picture in horror, realizing that now things are even worse for them. The guy in the blue jacket pushes the guy with the carrots away from the direction of the hound's kick at the last moment. Pierced by the paw of a huge hound, he tells his comrade to flee immediately. A huge hound pulls a paw out of the guy's body, his eyes closed, a rivulet of blood running from his mouth. The guy with the wooden sword is standing in front of the huge hound about to protect Xiang Ying. Tears appear in his eyes as he yells for Xiang Ying to get up. Xiang Ying hears this and opens her eyes. She is badly injured. Her uniform is all bloody. Protecting Xiang Ying guy runs at the hound with a wooden sword. The sword catches fire with flames. From the last of her strength, Xiang Ying uses the treatment above her hand. A balloon appears. Xiang Ying's technique heals the guy from running on the hound. Apparently, some of his injuries are healed. Xiang Ying's hand falls to the ground helplessly on the technique she had spent all she had left. The wooden sword knocked out by the hound, describing an arc, flies off to the side. The hound stands over the downed man with a sword sticking out of her shoulder, but she seems to be generally okay. Pinned by a huge clawed paw in a pool of blood repeats Xiang Ying's name. In his last breath, he summons strength from the blood of his ancestors to crush the devils. His bloodshot eyes begin to glow reddish-orange. His entire body embraces the glow. Releasing the energy, he explodes. There is a massive explosion. Behind the sounds of the explosion, you can hear the snarling of the cursed creature. The damned creature is badly wounded, burned, but still alive. Tucking his tail, the exhausted hellhound leaves the scene of the battle. A sunny day in the courtyard of a psychiatric hospital with a merry laugh, one of the patients chasing butterflies. At this time, lying in the grass, John is busy with an important matter. He counts the ants, coming to the logical conclusion that there are a lot of them. Fan sits nearby in a meditative pose, immersed in himself. The blue screen informs Fan that he has obtained a key training technique at the death level, and now his body can absorb the power of the sky and earth. He hears Jean's voice wanting to show him something. John shows Fan an ant and says that it seems to be sick. The white-haired man, holding an ant, notices that something is wrong with Fan. Fan's body is engulfed in blue flames, his face reddened with tension. The screen reports that key technique is a skill with tremendous power. The vortex can explode. The roommate, wanting to help Fan, who is flushed with tension, sticks a needle in his head. John applies the galactic transition acupuncture technique. Fan's entire head and shoulders are studded with needles. Fan's face blushes to the point of extreme redness when John sticks another needle into him. Finally, Fang can't stand it. A scream erupts from his chest, needles flying in different directions. John barely manages to dodge the flying needles. Falling, he hits the ground. Behind his back, a needle pokes a poor crying ant in the grass. The blue screen reports that the unlocked absolute vision technique that eliminates the possibility of explosion. Wiping his sweat, Fang says he practiced with the voice in his head. It was very uncomfortable, but John helped him. John, lying on the ground, listens attentively to what his comrade is saying. Quickly jumping up to Fan, John asks how he is feeling, if the galactic transition acupuncture technique helped. Fan smiles at John, saying he feels better. The acupuncture technique helped. Fang says he's got a problem. He's very hungry. His stomach is making strange noises. An ant researcher comes up with an idea. Fang is puzzled by what idea his friend has come up with. John, holding an ant with 2 fingers, offers to eat the poor insect. He says the ants are like crab sticks, he's eaten them before. A little sour, but quite edible. Fan is surprised by such unusual facts and wants to know if it is true. John shoves a squeaking ant into Fan's open mouth. The nurse calls everyone to gather in the dining room. It's lunchtime. Hearing the announcement, John throws the ant into the grass. He takes Fan to lunch, saying there are real crab sticks waiting for them. The patients are shocked by Fan's unprecedented appetite. He ate all their food. Jean tells them not to worry. Fan will throw up and he'll give them their food back. Some patients think that would be a good idea. Fan's nurse says he needs to eat less or he'll get a stomach ache. The perpetually hungry patient, however, does not listen to her and continues to eat. The nurse calls for help to the baffled doctor standing nearby. Patient tells doctor he's still hungry. Doctor asks if Fan suffers from an eating disorder. Hungry Jean, with a crackle, takes a bite of a tablespoonful. The doctor decides it could be an eating disorder while Fan crunches the rest of his spoon. The nurse stands nearby with her mouth hanging open in shock, holding a pile of trays from which all the food was eaten by Fang. A man from the Special Investigations Unit clicks his camera. He photographs a defeated fighter with a hound, wearing a blue jacket. The staff inspects the entire tunnel, one of them picking up what's left of the guy who exploded, Shin's body still left sitting against the wall. A figure with a cigarette in his teeth watches over the department, a blue ribbon. After assessing the scene, Cyclops becomes enraged and swears at the hellhound. He calls on the phone and reports that the creature, despite the numerical superiority of the 4 fighters, graduated from the university with honors. Cyclops reports that the cursed level 2 creature knew it should attack the healer first to incapacitate the team. Throwing down the bullhorn, he says that fighters of the same level now won't be able to overpower the wizened, cursed creatures. He ponders that the fighter must have escaped through the sewers using the smell of sewage to cover his scent. There is good news. The dog is wounded. Cyclops extinguishes a bullhorn by stepping on it and says that the sewer is nearby and it's better to be on the lookout. After finishing the dialogue, he ends the phone call by pressing the red button on his cell phone. One-Eyed tells the employee standing nearby to tell the information center to raise the monster's danger level. A staff member with glasses takes notes behind the person in charge and says it will be done. He's embarrassed. but he has to relay the request of the families of the dog victims to the commander. The one putting his hand on the shoulder of the guy with the glasses says the remains will be given to the families. He asks to be told they did a good job and deserve their place. As he leaves, however, he adds that the fighters were just being a bit silly and stubborn. Raising his hand, he forbids the last sentence to be communicated to the relatives of the monster's victims. In the office of the head of the clinic, Shay slams his hand on the desk. He says he'll call a special unit to throw the dog out. Slamming the doors, an orderly bursts into the office. He delivers the bad news. John and Fang have rendered the cooks unconscious. For a second, the head sitting at the table trembles and clutches at his heart. However, he quickly falls into a familiar pattern and asks the orderly to tell him what happened. The orderlies drag the tireless eater from the table. The doctor tells him not to let him eat inedible food and that the patient needs to be examined. Fan is led out of the dining room under arms, one of the patients good-naturedly asking if Fan will return his food. With signs, the best friend shows Fan that he has an idea. He swings hard, sitting at the table getting ready to hit his head on it. John starts banging his head against the table with loud noises attracting the attention of the orderlies. There are shouts for help, call for paramedics. Some of the patients are cheering the performance. The doctor is frozen in bewilderment. The men leading the patient under the arms leave the patient unattended and run to the table, while everyone is panicking trying to stop Fan, who has safely forgotten to run away. On the run, he gives a thumbs up to his friend, thanking him for his help. John, who is being carried by two orderlies, gives a thumbs up in response, with bumps on his forehead, but helps his friend free himself. At that time, the kitchen is bustling with work, with cooks moving heavy pots of food. An ominous, shadowy voice looms over him, declaring that he is hungry. The two female chefs stare in horror at the source of the voice. Fan looks like a monster with his tongue sticking out and red eyes burning, and declares that he is hungry and wants human flesh. The women are shocked by what they see and realize it's a patient from that very room. They faint. The starving patient, who doesn't seem so scary from the outside, is trying to figure out what happened. The orderly finishes his story. The head doctor says the women should be given a raise of 300 yuan as compensation. Having somehow resolved the issue with the cooks, he begins to speculate on how Fan's hunger is so intense. The orderly replies that Dr. Wang is still checking on Fan in hopes of finding out. The head of the clinic asks to be notified when something about Fan's condition becomes clear. Night is falling on the city, full moon shining brightly with stars. There is a sewer manhole next to the hospital near the dumpsters. The creature that crawled out of the open trash can realizes that it is badly injured and needs to heal and eat. Hellhound decides to let a kind man take care of her. Growling, she undergoes a huge transformation with puffs of dust kicking up around her. The hound turns into a cute dog. Fellow cursed beasts informed her that people like cute creatures like the one she turned into. Thinking that seeing a wounded dog people will not be able to resist the pestle, is practicing saying hello to them. A wobbly hound in the body of a cute little dog goes to meet stupid people. The dog casts a shadow on the pavement in the shape of a large hound with red eyes. In Jean and Fan's room, flies buzz around the lamps. John tells Fan that his watch is broken again. It shows February 29th, but the nurse told him it's March 2nd. He needs to go to the store and get it fixed. But since the warranty has expired, he needs money to get the watch fixed for free, money Fan and John don't have. John says he heard that there's a lot of money to be made by kidnapping. Fan wonders who his friend can kidnap in the hospital. He wants to kidnap Fan, but wonders who will give him money for a patient of the mental hospital. He remembers that the comrade must have a girlfriend. He'll pretend to kidnap Fan, and when she fixes his watch, he'll let her go. John is very happy with his plan, but his roommate declares that he doesn't have a girlfriend. The white-haired man asks how so, because Fang told him that the TV presenter is his girlfriend. Fang replies that it's his wife. At this time, someone wants to jump into the palau. In the window of the palau, two dog paws are seen. John says that then his plan is cancelled because people say you can live longer if you don't take your wife's money. Outside the window, someone is whining. The unlikely kidnapper thinks he hears a puppy barking. Fang says it must be the one outside the window. Hellhound is trying to look as cute as possible to be let into the ward. John is fascinated by the sight of the puppy. Fan agrees that the puppy is very cute. The dog, still playing the cute creature, thinks to himself that people are very stupid. John notices that the dog is wounded. There is blood on his ears. He feels sorry for the poor thing. Hellhound stretched out several stories to reach the room. The patient looking out the window below can't figure out what it is. John says the dog's wounds are serious and they'd better heal them quickly. Fang reminds him that his friend knows acupuncture and it will definitely help. The hound can't believe his luck when a set of needles appears. He's sure he's very lucky. John is about to stick a sharp needle into the doggy. Fang sits nearby and watches. The doggy's face stops being kind when he is not seen. He thinks he will eat his rescuers after they cure him. A needle stabs him in the head and blood spurts from the wound. The dog is shivering on the bed. John asks, puzzled, if that means he's getting better. Fang replies that he probably should be. The demon doesn't understand why he's paralyzed. He continues to shiver when John says he'll put more needles in. The paralyzed dog only has to watch as the acupuncture master brings his hand over him with needles clamped between his fingers. The animal is thrown from hot to cold. He thinks he is dying. In desperation, he thinks it is a hallucination. Jean watches with interest the needle-pointed paralyzed dog lying on the bed. From the stomach sitting on the bed next to him, Fan's stomach once again emitted strange sounds. His roommate notices this and asks Fan if he's hungry. Fang replies that he is hungry. His stomach is empty. His stomach keeps making the sounds of a dying whale. The blue screen informs the host that it has detected a creature with a huge reserve of energy that will last him for 3 days. The creature is right in front of him. Nearby, a hellhound in the form of a small dog lies there, still trembling from the many needles John stuck into it. Fang looks at the dog. He realizes he can eat it. The screen tells him that the creature is non-toxic and fit to eat, has a second level of energy, and even offers a few recipes. Fan's eyes glow ominously as he looks at the dog. He puts a hand to his stomach. Dog is trying to figure out what's going on, why Fang's face has changed. Fan tells the ward neighbor that the doggy is a very cute doggy, but John also changes in his face. A sinister glint appears in his eyes. Fan says that if a doggy is cute, it means it's delicious. John agrees with him. The dog is shocked at what he hears, his fur becoming frizzy. The infernal creature cannot understand the logic of his new acquaintances. To them, cute means delicious. The dog wonders if they are human at all. The dog stands up on his haunches trembling and thinks it's impossible. He doesn't understand how his friends could want to eat such a cute creature. John abruptly pulls the needles out of the doggy, giving him a discomforting sensation. He says he's stopping the acupuncture. They have no reason to save the animal. Fang says he trusts Jean, and since they have no way to save the dog, his friend finishes for him, saying they'll wait until the dog dies and cook. The dog realizes he's in the hands of some not-so-adequate people. John puts a hand on the dog's muzzle and tells him, "Rest in peace." In all seriousness, John begins to say goodbye to the dog, who is destined to leave the world of the living. Hellhound decides that humans are too arrogant and that no matter what, they will die. John is surprised to note that the dog is still alive, turning to Lin Fan. Fang looks at the dog carefully and says it doesn't matter. He points to the dog's wounds and says they are bleeding, so the animal will die soon. Jean says they'll just wait for him to die for as long as they need to, and then have dinner. The comrade asks Fan to leave him at least the doggy's hip. The hellhound begins to lose patience. His fangs protrude when John and Fan start discussing how delicious his meat will be. Finally, he decides he's been holding back long enough. With a growl, he turns into a huge hound. His new acquaintances only seem to be overjoyed by this transformation, John shouting with delight. Hellhound threatens to tear the pathetic humans to shreds for mistreating him when he was so cute. The reason for Jean's delight is that he is sure that now he and his neighbor will have enough meat for two. The hound lunges at John, opening its huge maw, threatening to swallow the acupuncture specialist whole. Fan stops the dog from doing so with a swift movement, grabbing it by the fang. For a few moments, the hound doesn't realize what's going on. Fan, holding his hands over his two fangs, throws the hound against the floor of the chamber. Continuing to hold onto his fang with one hand, he tells the cursed creature that such a big dog should know that biting people is bad. The hound, lying on the floor, can't understand the situation. How an ordinary person could do such a thing. Hellhound decides to attack again. He's already thinking about biting the stupid man's arm off. The hound's huge teeth are about to bite through the hand of the man who still holds the dog's fang. But Fan's arm proves to be unexpectedly strong, the infernal creature unable to damage it. John wants to touch the hound's soft fur and asks his friend to let him. Fang says the hound now doesn't bite and can be stroked. Jean is very happy about that. The thought of some hairy man stroking him makes the hound furious. But Fang holds the hound tightly, and John walks over to the dog and strokes it as it wriggles. For a second-level cursed creature, it's very humiliating. With one hand holding the hound, Fan swings the other arm, and sharply strikes the teeth of the monster. A loud sound is heard, the entire body of the hound swaying. With a crack, two broken fangs flew out of the hellhound's mouth. Fang says he warned the creature that it was bad for him to bite people. He warns the hound not to show aggression towards his friend. John is glad that with his teeth knocked out, the doggy has become very obedient. He spreads his arms wide and hugs the big dog. The hound thinks she's facing a very high-level fighter. The dog lying on the floor realizes that Fang is extremely dangerous. John continues to squeeze the dog with soft hair. Fan is not happy that the dog is not dead yet, because Fan is very hungry. That's when John became interested in the fluffy tail of the big dog. He asks his friend to wag his tail. Fang says that the dog has learned to behave and will wag his tail for his friends. The hound thinks he will never wag his tail like domestic dogs who wag their tails for the pleasure of their owners. But before he can finish the thought, he's already wagging his tail from side to side. He thinks it doesn't count and is just showing respect to a strong fighter before getting rid of him. Burning with shame, he fantasizes about making people suffer twice as much as he does now. John is not satisfied. He wants to see the dog spin his tail like a propeller, not wag it from side to side. Mentally, the hound prays to ask to stop bullying. In desperation, she even considers suing people for violating the dog's rights. Fang, holding the hound by the fang, pulls it toward him with force. He easily slides the hound's huge head toward him. Patting the hound on the muzzle, the guy says that such a big dog should know how to wag his tail so it's cuter. He continues to pat the hound on the head, Fan stroking, nearly causing the hound's skull to break through. In desperation, the hellhound decides to do what is asked of him. He actually starts twirling his tail. Jean marvels at the way the dog does it, while the dog burns with shame as he stands up with his front paws on the bed. He strokes the dog again and says it's a wonderful dog. Continuing to praise the doggy, John says his meat must be very tasty. His roommate is also convinced that dog meat is bound to be delicious. John is pleased that the dog has grown so much in size, or there wouldn't have been enough meat for two. Fan looks dreamily at the dog and says this cutie will be their food. The hound listens in horror as the patients praise their future meal. Jean asks how they will cook the dog. He likes the dog meat stir-fried with chili sauce. A friend, on the other hand, says he likes the roast, but the woman in his head said it would taste better with plum wine. John notices that they don't have a fire to cook the dog, and after all, the head doctor said that meat should be eaten well cooked. Hellhound sighs in relief, hoping to escape death at least this way. Fan looks up at the electric lights next to which flies continue to fly. He suggests to his friend to use the electricity to fry meat. For a while, John ponders Fan's original idea, and turning to his comrade cheerfully, says that the idea should work. When he helped a friend with electricity training, the meat smelled really good. Fan says the dog meat will also smell really good. The graying dog thinks he must be going to hell in a man's world. Fang holds the hound above his head with a distinctive sound of electric shocks running through it. This is a very dangerous way to roast meat and should not be done. Enjoying the sight of the hound being roasted, he declares that using electricity instead of fire is very cool. Another patient, looking at the flickering lights in the room of friends in a frenzy, decides that they are having a party and out of call. The electric shocks continue through the hound's body and smoke begins to emanate from it. Jean drools when he smells fried meat. Standing in current discharges that don't hurt him in the slightest, Fang declares that he's almost done. The hound, in her thoughts, curses at humans, calling them devils in the flesh. The mighty dog's paw is raised by the electric shocks and falls helplessly. The monster dies tortured by two patients of a clinic for the mentally ill. The symbolic picture shows the grave of a big dog over which his soul is going to heaven. The sparking wires disconnected from the hound and hung in the air. Jean, examining the body of the demonic creature, asks if it is well fried. The friend replies that he can check. The breast part of the dog carcass is cleaned of fur and skin. Surely real dogs should not be eaten. These are our friends. John and Fang happily inhaled the appetizing aroma coming from the dog's carcass. They are accepted to eat dog meat with great appetite. Someone is walking with a flashlight down the hospital corridor of a floor where the lights have gone out. The new nurse, Liu Jiang, can't understand what happened and what is the reason for the disappearance of the light. His co-workers advised him to check out a special room on this floor. Having no experience in this hospital, the nurse is perplexed as to what is so special about this ward. He looks inside. The light from the orderly's flashlight penetrates the room, dispelling the darkness. The orderly sees Fan and Chen next to the monster's huge head. A terrified orderly backs away, realizing that the patients are holding a severed head in their hands. In the darkness, flashing their eyes and still holding the dog's head, Fang and John ask the attendant if he wants to join. In horror, the orderly falls to the floor, dropping the flashlight from his hands. He runs away from the room, screaming that patients eat human flesh. flashlight still lying on the floor. Hospital corridor ahead goes Mr. Shea, asking the orderly if he's sure of what he saw. A nurse being dragged under the arms of other orderlies says he definitely saw a head that was staring at him in horror. The head of the clinic asks if the switch has been fixed, and when he hears an affirmative answer, he turns on the light. Walking into the lighted room, Mr. Shea says it's basically clear. Lying on the beds, Fang and John say hello to him in one voice. In a stern voice, he asks special patients what they do. When his eyes fall on an object that wasn't in the chamber before, he asks Fan and Chen what it is. Fang and Chen also unanimously reply that it's a dog hair rug. On the floor of the ward lies the poor dog's uneaten fur. Sha picks up the fur and examines it. The look of the fur reminds him of something. The head doctor can't figure out what a cursed beast's fur is doing in a hospital room. She, holding a scrap of fur in her hands, interrogates Fan and John about what they were doing. Those lying on the bed again reply to the head of the clinic that they were just sleeping. Shay asks incredulously, "Did they get out of bed?" Fang and John shake their heads, claiming that they were just sleeping and not aware of anything. The orderly doesn't come out from behind Shay's back, saying he definitely saw the head. The old doctor is starting to get angry. With red fire in his eyes, he asks Fan what's under the blanket. Fang throws back the blanket, showing there is nothing there, but there is a glow coming from under his clothes. Red-faced Shu covers his eyes with his hand and tells the patient that the glow is giving him away. Fang pretends not to understand how the flashlight ended up under his clothes. The head of the clinic demands that the patient give him the flashlight, and he complies. Turning off the flashlight, Mr. Shea sighs, thinking about something. After dealing with the flashlight, he wants to continue asking about the mech. But the patients pretend it's bedtime without letting the chapter continue the dialogue. Meter Shu sighs heavily, thinking about the fact that he's not old yet. He's only 50 years old. But since he's been working at the hospital, he's gone gray. Finished with his heavy musings, he says goodnight, turns off the light, and leaves the room. The doors slam shut, and John and Fang are finally left alone in the chamber. After everyone has left, they stop pretending and get up. Fang wants to ask John something and turns to address him. John cautiously inquires, "Did Fan have enough dog meat?" Fan says he's full, but he has a question. He wants to know how he manages to hide the needles from the head of the clinic if Fan never manages to do so. John explains to a shocked Fan that he hides the needles in his luxurious, shiny hair. Fang is thinking of growing himself equally long hair to hide things in. Jean says that would be great. Night City Headquarters Building, Special Defense Squads. The leader of the Special Forces stands at the window of the headquarters, thinking that he will wipe the monster into powder when he finds it, skin it, and shatter its bones. His head is ready to burst from the sobbing families of the victims. A voice in his earpiece tells him it's an old man who likes money. The head of the clinic calls to say that his patient has killed the monster the one-eyed man is after and asks him to come over. Cyclops distrusts the doctor's words and insists on meeting in person. After thinking for a moment, without taking the cigarette out of his teeth, the head of Special Forces turns around, goes to the window, and dials a special combination on the remote to open it. He stands at an open window with a dizzying view, the wind whistling through the open window. Standing up against the window, Cyclops pushes off the ground well with his feet. Jumping out of the window as he flies toward the ground, he thinks he's lost his mind for jumping out of the window in the middle of the night to meet a crazy old man. The new orderly, who was frightened by Chen and Fang, is looking for his head under the clinic's windows. At last, he sees a huge skull on the ground among bones and scraps of flesh, with someone throwing a bone on top of it. The shocked orderly had no idea the head was so big at the time someone throws another bone from the window. Some kind of sound echoes in the night, startling the already winded orderly. The nurse looks around, hoping to find the source of the sound, thinking to himself that there's something damn funny going on with him. When he turns to the corpse of the giant creature, there is no skull. The orderly, shivering, points to where the skull was and asks the void if it has escaped. Unable to stand on his feet, the orderly falls and hits the ground. The guy loses consciousness and remains lying on the ground like that. Cyclops shows the huge skull of Shay holding it with one hand. He says that if he understood correctly, he found the skull of a level 2 cursed hound and asks Shay how it died. One-Eyed reads the notebook that Shay gave him and asks if what is written there is true. It's very unbelievable that there's a patient who tries to kill himself over and over again, but gets stronger each time. Cyclops says that according to the camera footage, 2 psychos did kill the cursed creature. Shay replies that she has no idea how the patients did it, but apparently the creature was eaten. From shock to Cyclops did not immediately realize what Shay said. then with a smile repeats that the patients ate the damned hound. Cyclops decides that Fan and Jean have a gift and wants to meet them. The park of the psychiatric clinic, the sun peeks out from behind the trees. On the ground sit the heroes of the night's incident and stare intently at the sun. It seems to be some kind of game. The rules of the game are simple. You have to look carefully at the sun, and whoever blinks first loses. Fan stares at the sun, doesn't look like it's making him the slightest bit uncomfortable. John opposite holds his eyelids with his hands, unable to hold on any longer. He asks Fan to blink. Fan agrees. He turns to Jean and says he's done. John is like a child rejoicing over Fan's loss. He jumps up and down and yells that Fan lost. Nearby, Cyclops and Shay sit on a bench and watch the scene. Cyclops thinks that if you look at the sun for long enough, your retinas might have problems, but Fan is perfectly fine. He realizes that Fang may be the possessor of a great gift. One-Eyed says to the head doctor that the boy may be gifted and asks if he can take Fan away if it's confirmed. The head doctor can't contain his emotions when she asks him if he's serious. Interpreting the chief doctor's words in his own way, Cyclops begins to say that if Shay doesn't trust him, he claps Cyclops on the back and says that he will give him the patient without any problems. Moreover, he does not mind to give him the second one as well. The head of the clinic, with barely restrained joy, says that the only condition is not to bring patients back. However, he notes that the one-eyed man will have to make a commitment that the clinic is not at fault in the event of unforeseen incidents. Cyclops continues to think that Shay is worried about the safety of the patients and assures them that they will be safe with him. Shay says with a chuckle that it's very well thought of herself that she's more worried about the staff rather than the patients. The one-eyed man begins to say that the situation in the city is difficult. Cursed creatures are sniffing around everywhere, and there are fewer and fewer fighters. 2 fighters will not hurt. Shu thinks again, more worried about John and Fang not tearing the one-eyed man's house down. The head of the special services gets up from the bench and tells us that the cursed creatures are getting smarter. They have started to hide under the guise of pets. Shui sighs and says he cares about the future of humanity. Cyclops says there's nothing to worry about. He's a fighter protecting this city and will fight for it to the last drop of blood. He promises to stop the damned things from destroying humanity. Looking up at the sky, he thinks that the power of a single fighter is limited. The more fighters he attracts, the safer the city will become. Approaching Jean, and Fanu Cyclops asks if they killed a level 2 hound last night. Standing over them, he asks a range of questions. He wonders how they managed to eat the hound. Looking at each other, the friends try to think of what to say to him. They reply that they did not eat or kill the hound, and that it committed suicide. Cyclops' hand lights up with an orange light and he points it towards Fan. He stops the glowing hand a few centimeters from Fan's face. Fang stares admiringly at the golden glow emanating from the one-eyed man's hand. Cyclops notices that Fang has not reacted to the attack and thinks that despite his psychic potential, he can only reach level 3 at most. The white-headed man moves over to his friend, who looks at the one-eyed man. John whispers in Fan's ear that the man must have come to train Fan. Cyclops looks at this scene with some incomprehension. Friends look at Cyclops with adoration and say he's a good man. Fang says he's not suited for him because he's a one-eyed man who can't train such a demanding student. Fan's phrase breaks Cyclops' brain. He begins to realize how unusual these 2 patients are. Jean says it doesn't matter. He can cure Cyclops and he'll help his friend with his training. Cyclops realizes that by training they mean their constant near-suicidal attempts. John says that Lil Fan is very strong now and he needs to keep practicing. Fang nods in agreement. Jean goes on to say that when he heals Cyclops' eye, they can train together. The comrade confirms that John can do acupuncture. His skills are excellent and he will be able to cure the eye. John starts running around Cyclops, asking if he wants his eye fixed. Touching his eye, Cyclops thinks that even an international-level doctor couldn't cure him. He can't understand how these 2 are going to treat him. He agrees to try it, and sits down on the grass next to Fan, thinking that with his existing strength, playing with acupuncture wouldn't affect him in any way. A needle-studded Cyclops realizes that he has a strange feeling. Clasping the needle between his fingers, John shouts that he is applying a galactic-level technique. Ducking with needle in hand, he talks about the technique of half of the Milky Way. Cyclops, while he has needles stuck in his head, asks about the meaninglessness of the names. They're just for fun after all. John continues to praise his acupuncture technique. He says he did research for years before coming up with this technique. Every one of his patients said the acupuncture was done perfectly. Fan confirms, since he is the only person Jean practiced on. A faint smile appears on Cyclops' lips as he realizes he feels numb. He explains that he thought it was a joke the whole time, so he didn't activate the defense. He's surprised that the needles were able to affect him. Shouting the name of his technique, John jams the 13th needle into Cyclops' head. The latter agrees to a new needle. But when the needle pokes into the one-eyed man's head, it feels like something's penetrating his brain. Suddenly losing consciousness, he closes his eyes and falls down. Fan instantly picks up the fallen Cyclops with one hand. John is surprised that Cyclops passed out from the acupuncture. Frustrated, he wonders if his Milky Way technique is all right. Since Cyclops is the first person he's tried it on, Jean is going to modify it and hopes it goes much better next time. He asks Fan if he wants to volunteer, and Fan agrees because he trusts Jean completely. After a while, John pondered why Fang had disconnected from the improved technique. Sitting over two people fainting, he wonders what went wrong. He decides he needs to do more experiments, but he's run out of volunteers. After a while, 3 bodies lay on the ground, passed out Cyclops, Fang, and John, who decided to put the experience on himself. Shay walks up to them and wonders where Jean got a year's supply of needles. Looking at the disabled national-level fighter, Shay begins to fear for the safety of the city. The emergency room is crowded with people, all busy doing their own thing. The air is broken by the ringing of the landline phone on the front desk. People froze in shock, realizing that this call was special. The staff starts to panic. Are these two from the mental institution again? On the phone, Shay starts to dictate the address of the hospital, but is interrupted to say that an ambulance is on its way. Shay says it will take 2 cars this time since he has 3 people with injuries. Ambulances arrive on the call and pick up 3 patients. The driver of the ambulance, Mr. Huang, can't get into the car. He has a white bandage with blood on his eyes. The paramedics realize the driver recently had eye surgery. Even so, the driver says he can handle it, because it's a piece of cake. An ambulance with a nearly blind driver drives off, leaving the head of Shay's clinic and 2 orderlies in shock. An ambulance driven by a man with eye injuries drives very erratically and almost crashes into bushes. Mr. Shay thinks that the ambulance driver knows what to do, so should he be worried, or should he assume that everything is fine? Hospital Vice President Hua Tian is surprised at how resilient Fang and John are. Watching the operating room, he thinks that maybe he needs to fake an accident to kill these 2. He slaps himself for thinking thoughts unworthy of a doctor. With a red handprint on his face, he wonders how he could even think of such an idea. But after a moment's thought, the patients are a headache, and once again with a loud sound slaps himself in the face as punishment. All red, he calls Shay and asks if he understood him well last time. Why did he send his problem patients to the clinic again, and even added 1 person to them? The head of the clinic calmly remarks that last time he said to keep Fan John in the hospital longer so they wouldn't have to re-enter the hospital. The vice president says there will be no order in his hospital as long as these 2 are there. Shay, in return, wants to transfer money to him as compensation. The vice president is shocked by Shay's generosity and looks at his cell phone screen to check. He sees the information about the money transfer, and Shay asks to keep the patients in the hospital for a few days, otherwise he will accuse a colleague of bribery. After realizing that he's been played, the vice president can't come to his senses for a few moments. Shay ends the dialogue and says goodbye, the phone falling out of the hands of the stunned vice president. He drops his phone and yells profanities at Shay throughout the hospital. In the operating room, a blue screen congratulates Fan on moving to the next level and gaining the appropriate defense ability. In a hospital corridor, nurses are discussing a patient. An orderly passed out after a hound's head incident. Someone is carefully feeding the very same orderly, Liu Zi, from a spoon. He tells the girl she's the best he's ever met. She says she's gained weight, but in 5 months she'll be slim again. The orderly says he doesn't care if the girl is fat or thin. He's happy Uncle Wang brought them together. Liu Zi says he'll be sure to thank his uncle when he gets home. While the girl peels the apple, the attendant has to give the girl the bad news. He says he can't have kids and asks how the girl feels about it. She holds out an apple and says that it doesn't matter. They can always take the baby from the orphanage, and asks, who does Liu Zi want, son or daughter? An overjoyed Liu Zi tells his lover that he would like a daughter. She says she'd like a son. Liu says they'll do as she wishes. A doctor enters the room and says that if there are no shocks, the patient will soon be able to go home. At this time, the nurse says that the patients have come to their senses. The doctor commands to take them to the ward. To the orderly's horror, Fan, lying on a gurney, is brought into the room. Liu Zi points a finger at Fan, remembering the trouble that happened to him. Panicking, he says the patients in the cursed ward eat human flesh. Liu Zi falls to the floor. The doctor can't understand what hit him so hard. Grabbing the doctor's leg, he asks to be moved to another room. Upon waking up, Fang says to the former orderly's horror that he is hungry and hungry. Fang and Liu Zi meet eyes, which scares the hell out of the latter. He faints again. The doctor asks what's wrong with him. Lying in the ward, Cyclops thinks how he got to such a point. Because with the available strength, even bullets do not take him. He wonders how he could have passed out from John's acupuncture while he and Fan are discussing what drinks to have. Turning on his side, he ponders how a psycho could knock out the strongest fighter in the city. John and Fang notice that Cyclops is awake. John walks over and touches his forehead with his finger. He says he is ashamed that he couldn't cure the Cyclops' eye. Maybe if he makes a few more attempts, he will succeed. Turning his head to Gene, Cyclops allows him to try again if he so desires. John looks at Cyclops with admiration. He is very happy that he let him try again. He marvels at what a kind man this is. Fang nods in agreement. Getting down to business, John starts pulling needles out of his hair. Fang applauds him when he unravels his hair and clutches the needles in his hands and says he'll cure Cyclops' eye after all. The orderlies are carrying the needle-stabbed Cyclops on a gurney to the intensive care unit. Fang tells Jean not to worry, Cyclops will be fine. Lying on the bed, Cyclops, darker than a cloud, realizes he's passed out again because of the needles. He recalls that even when a level 9 creature broke all his bones, he stood on his feet. John comes to his bedside and apologizes that it didn't work out this time. He asks to try again. John says that after so many failed attempts, Cyclops doesn't have to believe him, but he wants to try again. Hearing the agreement, John shines with his arms folded and looks at Cyclops with adoration. John turns to Fan and says that the one-eyed man really trusts him. The comrade nods in approval. Cyclops, lying on the bed, thinks he should try again to make sure it's the needle's fault. A fighter's pride shouldn't be broken by a psycho. John takes his stand with needles in hand to Fan's applause and says he can do it this time. The unconscious Cyclops is again carried in by the orderlies, the nurse being asked to remove all needles from him. After he came to his senses, John and Fang approach him again. John innocently asks how he is feeling. Cyclops can't believe the psycho's paralyzing him over and over again. John, seeing how depressed Cyclops is, fears that he has stopped trusting him, but Fang reassures him by saying that Cyclops will always trust him. Rolling heavily onto his side, the one-eyed man looks at the two crazies and yells at them to get away from him. In the ward, John and Fan drink Sprite and Coke, thinking they taste disgusting. After soy milk, Sprite and Coke don't seem real to them. John states that the hospital has no Sprite or Coke and will have to go out and buy them themselves. Fang notes that they have no money. The friends look greedily at Cyclops lying on the bed next to them. The Cyclops, stunned by losing consciousness several times, lies pondering the fate of the world. Approaching the bed on which the one-eyed man lies, John offers to buy John's watch at a low price, just for one attempt at acupuncture. An annoyed Cyclops simply tells a couple of psychos to get off his back. Jean starts telling how he loves the watch and only gives it to Cyclops because he's a good man. Looking at John's hand, the startled Cyclops sees that the watch is drawn on it with a marker. He says he doesn't want John's watch. If he and Fan tell him how they killed the hound, he'll give them money. John and Fang look at each other and decide to tell Cyclops about the hound. Jean says the dog was very cute, had soft fur and a funny twirling tail. Fan continues that the dog did everything he was told, even when he told the animal to fry itself. Out of his mind, Cyclops can't believe the hound let himself be petted, then killed to be eaten. John marvels at how the hound's meat fell. Fang nods, saying it was a wonderful dog, off-screen. The hound's spirit is outraged at their shamelessness. Cyclops screams that they're messing with him, and he almost believes them. Sinking down on the bed, the one-eyed man is angry with himself, saying it was for nothing that he decided to get information from such lunatics. John and Fang can't figure out which psychos the one-eyed man is talking about. Fang assumes that maybe he's talking about himself. Fang and John reach out their hands to Cyclops, exhausted by their antics and stories. They told him everything, so they want the money he promised them. Cyclops pulls a gold bank card out of his hospital shirt pocket. He says there's 10,000 yuan on the card and tells me the PIN number. Fang catches the card along with Jean, looking puzzled at the strange yellow object. John and Fan continue to look at the card as Cyclops continues to tell them that the card contains the rest of his savings. His parents are dead. He has no children. He himself may die fighting cursed creatures. The amount on the card doesn't matter much to him. John and Fang shove the card in the one-eyed man's face, claiming it's not money. The one-eyed man yells at them to go to the bank and withdraw money from the card. But for Jean and Fan, that thought proves to be out of reach. They just throw a gold card with a lot of money back. Lying on the bed, Cyclops catches his card with 2 fingers. John decides that the one-eyed man was just playing a joke on them and wasn't going to give them any money. Fan adds that he's a terrible egoist. Cyclops, whose mouth is almost bleeding with anger, decides that these two are the real nuts. In the woods near the hospital, in a tree, lurks a cursed creature of the second level, a cursed serpent. He heard that the two people who absorbed the power of the cursed hound were in the hospital building. But in addition to the hound's aura, he senses the presence in the hospital of a very high-level fighter he can't match. It's too dangerous to go into the hospital, so he'll just wait for those two to come out. Sliding down the tree trunk, he unexpectedly hears some sounds. A human couple decide to go private in the woods. The lady asks for money up front. The man grudgingly agrees. Listening to Snake, Sai notes that if it wasn't for the fighter in the hospital, he would have taken his true form and devoured both humans. After a while, the man leaves the woman alone and walks away. Serpent remembers hearing about fallen women and decides that this must be one of them. The temptation to eat the woman is too great, and he decides that her disappearance will not attract the attention of the fighter. Turning into a huge snake, he opens his jaws over a woman who counts money. At the last moment, he feels the energy of the cursed hound. Transforming, he turns into a small snake in a tree again. After counting the money, the woman decides that her earnings for today are not enough. The woman notices two handsome boys walking down the road. The serpent realizes that the energy of the cursed hound is coming from them. Fang looks around for a place where they can buy Sprite, Coke, and something to eat. Jean turns her head around. At this time, a woman coming out of the woods calls two guys to her. Fang and John approach the woman and wonder if she knows where to buy food and drinks. A woman sees them holding hands and decides they are better off without the company of women. Fang wonders if her friend knows what she's talking about, but he doesn't know. Fang once again asks where to buy food drinks. John notes that they don't have any money. Then the woman notices that the pajamas her friends are wearing are not from Huatian Hospital. While the friends are fooling around, the woman looks at the logo on their pajamas. The pajamas feature the Tianshan Psychiatric Hospital logo. She realizes they're mental patients and remembers something. The picture from her memory is of her running down the street calling for her sister. Some guy throws her sister to the ground. Her sister is wearing pajamas similar to the ones her new acquaintances are wearing. A man tells her sister she's crazy for thinking a doll is her son. Cracking the doll in half, he claims to have ripped his sister's son in half. The poor woman in the pajamas of the mental institution begs him not to touch her son, but it's too late. The doll is torn in two. With a trembling hand, the doll's owner reaches for what's left of it, addressing it as her son. A man bursts into laughter at the sound of the thunderstorm. The woman in the pink dress sees the whole scene and feels sorry for her sister. Remembering her sister, the woman gives money to two psychiatric patients. She says to give them money to fast food workers, and they will feed them. John and Fan refuse her money, saying they can find their own sustenance. The woman, smiling, insists that they take the money because earning it is easier than they think. Serpent thinks now is the best time to take the power of the cursed hound and rushes at Fan with lightning speed. The one quickly grabs the cursed creature who can't understand what's going on. The woman is frightened by the snake, while the snake is wondering how Fan managed to capture him, because he is very fast. Fan shows the snake to John, stating that the snake is very cute and sweet. John agrees with him. Snake is very embarrassed that someone thinks he's cute. He had once been told that the longer the damned beasts spent time in smaller versions, the more people wanted to protect them. Checking it out, he once snuck up on a boy playing soccer, hoping he would like the little snake. When the snake crept up the guy's leg, he heard a hiss. In fear, he runs away from the snake, who can't understand what went wrong. Other kids also panic and run away from where they were playing soccer. The serpent takes offense that stupid humans can't see how cute he is. The fact that people are afraid of him, even in his diminutive form, makes him angry. But when John and Fan call him cute, he realizes that these two are not like the others. He wraps himself around Fan's arm in a sign of deep affection. Jean looks at the snake with interest. The screen tells him that by using it he can satisfy his hunger for 3 days and tells him the recipe for cooking it. Snake looks dreamily at Fan. She thinks Fan and John are different from the rest of the humans, not realizing that she is going to be eaten. While John is playing with the snake, Feng asks the woman to help him. A pot of appetizing snake meat is cooked on the stove in the girl's house. She adds herbs to the dish. Next to the pot in a bloody jar stands the severed head of a snake. The process of cooking the snake can't understand why it can't move when Fang presses it against the cutting board. The snake can't understand why they want to eat him if they think he's cute. Fang's a big kitchen knife over him. There is a cracking sound as the large knife comes down on the unfortunate snake. Fan looks at the broken kitchen knife with interest. Fan discards the useless broken knife in his head. Another idea has crossed his mind. Fang holds the snake with his hands. The snake thinks that if the knife didn't take him, Fang will definitely not do anything with his bare hands. But then the head of the serpent separates from the body. The place around is flooded with the blood of the serpent. The landlady puts a whole pot of cooked soup on the table. Fan notes that it smells very good. The woman notes that she is good at cooking. Her daughter always likes what her mom cooks for her. Fang and John, inhaling the pleasant aroma of the dish, suggests the hostess to join them and eat together. She refuses, saying that she has already eaten and wishes them a pleasant appetite. Fang and John each drink a bowl of soup, saying it's delicious. The woman is very pleased that the guests enjoyed the food and thanks them for inviting her to eat with them. A girl who looks like the landlady's daughter is walking home down a slum street. While seeing Jean and Fan off, a woman gives them a thermos of soup for the road. John and Fan thank the woman for making them a delicious soup and even giving them a portion to take with them. The woman tells them it's not that important and advises them to hurry back to the hospital. John once again praises the woman's soup. Fang says her daughter must be happy to have such a mom. This phrase thrown by Fan pierces the woman to the core. Wiping away tears, she says her daughter is really excited. Walking away from the woman, Fang and Zheng walk towards a crowd of monotonously dressed people. Fan looks on as the crowd passes Fan and John. One of the fighters gets goosebumps and realizes he may have run into a strong fighter. But when he turns around, Fang and John are already passing by. Looking at them, the fighter decides he must be imagining things. Looking around the area, the fighters notice that the creature's energy is gone somewhere, one of them suggesting that it may have escaped. Hospital room. Cyclops, sitting on the bed, can't believe the creature is dead. None of the fighters had confirmed the death of the beast. There was no way an ordinary human could have killed it. Fang, with a thermos of snake soup, opens the door and enters the chamber. On the phone, Cyclops is informed that near the hospital there is a signal of some creature that may be a level 2 serpent. One-Eyed looks at the thermos Fan offers him. Fan opens the thermos. From there, a divine smell comes out. A shocked Cyclops realizes that this could be soup from a cursed creature. The squad on the other end of the phone can't understand why the supervisor suddenly started swearing. With 2 fingers, Cyclops puts the snake bones into a special box that glows blue. The box reveals that the bones belong to a cursed creature, a mythical serpent of the 2nd level. Lying on the bed, a blackened Cyclops is trying to comprehend what happened. Fang and John continue to eat soup nearby. They decide to eat the soup themselves since the one-eyed man doesn't want it, even though he was offered it. Cyclops is trying to find out how they managed to kill and eat the snake. After all, it is a cursed creature of the 2nd level with a deadly poison. Jean says it was a cute snake that got close to them. Fan adds that it coiled around his arm and let itself be eaten. They remember how cute the snake was and how delicious, finger-licking delicious. Behind the scenes, the spirit of the snake resents being eaten by the spirit of the dog, calms him down. The Cyclops is angry with veins showing through on his forehead, his eyes burning red. He says if he trusts Jean and Fan again, he'll go out the window. John is surprised that Cyclops is so angry and hopes he gets better soon. Fang says that according to the head of the clinic, psychos tend to be aggressive. Cyclops, exhausted by the antics of John and Fan, becomes desperate. Time passes. The bright day is replaced by night. The lights in the windows of the hospital turn on. The Cyclops, lying in a dark chamber, reasoning that his 2 roommates have impressive strength since they could kill 2 cursed beasts. He tries to figure out how they were able to do it, and whether they always hid their incredible abilities. Rustling and stomping make Cyclops distracted from his musings. He realizes that his roommates are busy doing something. He sees the movement of their feet and decides they are going somewhere, but can't figure out why they are. Jean and Fang approach Cyclops' bed. Jean says that the one-eyed man is a good man and wants to use an advanced technique to cure him. One-eyed thinks that since they have shown great strength by killing a few cursed creatures, they can be trusted. He pretends to be asleep. Inserting needles into Cyclops' body, John says that the chamber is pretty dark and he can't see what he's doing. Fang replies that he believes John because he has studied acupuncture for years and will be able to cope even in the dark. Encouraged by Comrade John's words, he takes up the task. He starts putting needles in the head of an elite special forces fighter. Cyclops feels that the sensation he feels during John's acupuncture treatments has become much stronger. He clutches the sheet on the bed with discomfort. John is about to stick the last 13th needle, saying that he has no right to make a mistake. At that moment, a nurse enters the room, asks what is happening in the room, and shines a bright flashlight. John realizes that he missed. The nurse, pointing her finger, asks what John and Fang are doing to the patient. Cyclops, covered in sweat, exhales, trying to figure out if he's alive or not. He really doesn't want to do this, but out of his last strength, covered in needles, he calls for help. After that, he loses consciousness. His arm falls helplessly on the bed. Dropping the flashlight, the nurse is horrified and yells that 2 homicidal lunatics have made an attempt on another patient. A bleeding Cyclops is wheeled on a gurney into the operating room, his head damaged in several places. Jean is upset that he stuck the last needle in the wrong place. Fang tells him not to worry because there's still hope. John and Fan are lying in a ward tied to a bed in place of their roommate's bed. A void. Fan finishes his thought. There is hope as long as the patient is alive. The one-eyed man's head is shaved before the operation. The doctor says to be careful because the Cyclops' head is still bleeding. A shaved, naked, one-eyed man lies on a bed. A doctor puts on gloves before starting surgery. The doctor says the brain area has been checked and the surgery can begin. He pulls out a marker to mark the one-eyed man's head. Cyclops opens the eye that sees and looks at the doctor. The doctor is maximally embarrassed. On his table, the patient wakes up. For a while, no one on the operations team can say a word. Sighing doctor says that it is good that the patient came to consciousness before the operation, and not during. The doctor standing next to him is surprised. He has already administered anesthesia. Looking at the patient's testimony, the doctor states the facts. The patient recovered before surgery, now his condition is stable. We need to postpone surgery. The patient rises. The doctor wonders if Cyclops wants to go back to his room. The doctor continues, even though everyone in his ward is psychotic, the one-eyed man's condition is better than the others. Perhaps he needs a separate ward. One-eyed resentfully tells the doctor that the psycho is himself. Cyclops' face becomes so frightening that the doctor backs off, deciding that psychopaths should be more careful with psychopaths. Examining the scans, the doctor decides that there is something wrong with them. The patient's spine has somehow recovered, judging by the scans. Like a broken leg, this is where the doctor turns to the patient. But he's no longer in the operating bed. The doctor can't figure out where he's gone. The sunlight reflecting off Cyclops' bald head seems to illuminate the entire chamber as he enters. Standing in front of the bed of the bound and peacefully slumbering Jean, the one-eyed man says that he is the head of the special unit. But glistening with baldness, he continues, Jean has already fainted 3 times because of Jean. Cyclops says that Jean should be proud of that, thinking to himself that he won't forget what those 2 did to him. And even if he forgets, his hair will happily remind him of it. He's clearly nervous at this point. Waking Fan is impressed that Cyclops has managed to survive, which takes a lot of strength. He tells the one-eyed man, who has not fully recovered from the hair situation, that next time John will definitely cure him. Graying, Cyclops turns to see Fan tied to the bed, but deciding that he's not bad, he goes to the window and climbs out holding the frame with his hand. Before he jumps, he says goodbye to Fan and Jean and tells them they won't see each other again. A nurse entering the room at the last moment sees a man throwing himself out of a window. She's screaming that the patient Fang and Jean tried to kill has taken his own life. Cyclops jumps off from a great distance and lands on his feet in the middle of the hospital courtyard. People are shocked that a man landed from such a height. One-eyed calls on the phone and says that the guys may have great power, but their difficulty in dealing with people is unacceptable. On the other end of the wire, Shay drops the phone receiver in despair. He wraps his arms around his head and begins to reproach the one-eyed man for doing this, for giving hope and taking it away in despair. He even calls Cyclops a Cyclops. The mood of the head of the psychiatric clinic is harmoniously emphasized by the weather outside the hospital. A thunderstorm is raining. The vice president of the hospital, standing in the rain while a nurse holds an umbrella, finally managed to get Shay on the phone. The vice president says that one of Shay's patients has killed himself by going out the window. Such news makes Shay very sad. Sad. Shay asks if the other patients are okay. The vice president replies that the suicidal patient is probably okay too. He just ran away. Shay realizes it's about Cyclops and says not to worry. The vice president says that the fact of jumping out of the window does not bother him much. It is not the first time he has encountered patients of Shay, and he is ready for their antics. The reason for the call is that Cyclops ran away without paying for the treatment. At this point, Shay's hand with the tube falls on the table. He says that he doesn't know the person on the other end of the line, and that he has the wrong number. And then he hangs up. In anger, the vice president clutches the phone in his hands, so hard that cracks run down it. In the flow of cars at high speed is an ambulance. Inside, Fang and John discuss the fact that Cyclops survived. Jean wondered if Cyclops had a healthy eye. Fang says he doesn't think so, but next time Jean will definitely have a chance to cure Cyclops. John is very upset that he disappointed Cyclops, and didn't even say goodbye to them because of it. Fan recalls that before jumping out of the window, the one-eyed man said the word bye. He omits the part where the one-eyed man says they won't see each other again. John thinks that the one-eyed man has some business since he left without finishing his acupuncture sessions. He wonders if Cyclops will let him continue. Fang replies that of course, since the one-eyed man trusts Jean. The apples on the ambulance window catch John's attention, and he says he wants to eat them. Fan says she'll serve them to him, easily tearing the straps that bind him and reaching for the apples. Taking the apple with his freed hand, he hands it to Jean. John, being tied up, eats an apple right out of Fan's hands. Praising the apple he's eaten, he tells Fan he could use a snack too. Fan starts eating the apple, saying that it's really tasty and juicy. An ambulance driver calls a deputy a golden man for deciding to drive patients to a psychiatric hospital on his own. The deputy replies that it's much easier to make sure he's paid his bills. To get to his destination faster, the deputy presses the gas pedal. The ambulance screeches to a halt and speeds down the highway. The first harbor of the city of Yenhei can be seen. Ship with containers nearby are cranes. A huge octopus tentacle throws off a bald Special Forces fighter. The four fighters run away from the monster together by running into the space between the containers. They are confronted by a cursed creature of the 4th level, a huge octopus. Taking an advantageous position, the team attacks. The swordsman uses a level 1 mind sword. The man in the goggles casts a fire whirl spell, discarding the card. 2 flashes of blue and yellow strike the massive body of the octopus. The team freezes in anticipation. Like normal octopuses, the cursed creature releases some sort of black-colored substance. The hunters realize that this substance is a pernicious mist of the highest trapping ability, which means that the creature in front of them is not a level 4, but a level 5. They retreat because the fog is dangerous. One touch is death, and decide to request reinforcements. However, the fog follows them on their heels. The fighters cannot escape from it far, and one of them runs slower than the rest. The fog is getting thicker by the second the guy with the blue hair realizes he's about to die. Activated, the defense of the guy's golden claw is now protected from the octopus and fog by a golden wall. The silhouette standing above on the scaffolding says he's not in the best of spirits, his arm glowing yellow from the defense he activated. At the bottom between the tentacles of the octopus are protective balls with hunters. If not activated, defense poison mist would probably catch them all. Cyclops tells them not to dare die so quickly. He hopes to pacify the creature. His team is interested in a very important question in such a situation: why the boss changed his hairstyle. The one-eyed man applies the dragon breath technique. His eyes glow with a reddish glow around his hand, forming an energy flame. After aiming his attack at the target, he attacks the monster. An energy beam strikes the monster. A bunch of cars on the bridge stand practically motionless. Among them is an ambulance taking Fan and Zhenya to a psychiatric clinic. The doctor wonders why a traffic jam has formed. The orderly tells him that something probably happened up front. Panic-stricken people run past the ambulance, shouting that they need to get out of here. There's a cursed creature on the bridge. The doctor turns to the pale orderly and tells him he hears people screaming. At this time, a man, apparently thrown by the monster, crashes into the car. The vice president swears, realizing they're in a bad situation. Standing over the body of the defeated octopus, Cyclops realizes that something wrong is going on. Shaking off the tentacle, he says he can still feel the energy of the cursed creature. His team is in shock. The battle with the giant octopus took a lot out of them, and there is no desire to repeat it. One of his subordinates runs to him to tell him the unpleasant news. One cursed creature has escaped and is heading towards the center of the city. A subordinate shows the supervisor a clipboard with the location of the monster's location. A contour map of the city shows that the monster is now on the bridge. There are loud sounds of blows on the bridge, people running away from the monster while screaming. Meanwhile, in the ambulance, Fang reports that he is not full of apple. John replies that there are no more apples, they have eaten them all. Fang says that still in hunger, the girl in his head said that the last stage, the bursting stage, requires significant reinforcement. A paramedic asks a deputy for help while the deputy is busy with a casualty. The huge pink octopus that made so much noise on the bridge is looking for its father. The deputy, bending over the injured man, asks for a first aid kit from the car. He hurries the orderly along. They don't have much time. He says they have to run, the beast is coming and will be here soon. The doctor takes off and tosses the orderly his watch, an Apple Watch of the latest model. The orderly catches them. The deputy tells him to give him a first aid kit to take the watch run and for him to guard the watch like the apple of his eye. Clutching the watch in his hands, the orderly comes to his senses for a while. Finally, he tells the doctor that the patient's body is too badly damaged. There's no more help for him, and the doctor will die if he doesn't run away. Continuing to attend to the patients, the doctor begins to tell the orderly the story of the watch. This watch was donated by a child he saved after the deputy's first surgery. Since then, the deputy has vowed never to abandon his patients. The orderly is shocked by the deputy's touching story, but is compelled to ask another question. I mean, there are 2 patients in the ER. Shouldn't we be rescuing them? The blushing deputy tells the shocked orderly that these 2 don't count. The orderly wants to untie Jean and Fan. He walks into the ER and says the monster is coming and they need to escape. John and Fong look over, processing the new information. With a light sweep of his hand, Fan loosens the straps restraining John. The courseman says they're doing pretty well with the release and without it. The orderly tries to drag John Fan away from the bridge, but those have a very important question. They ask the orderly, to his surprise, if the creature he's about to run away from is cute. The one puzzled by such a question, after thinking about it, answers yes. He recalls the monster lifting cars with passengers and causing colossal destruction, all while looking pretty cute. Fan tells the orderly that if that's the case, then there's no need to run. John says it would be better for them to play with the monster. The orderly says they're probably out of their minds, but doesn't tell the guys anything new. A level 8 cursed octopus is looking for his father. In anger, he throws a bunch of cars around. Jean appears in a red aura and says he's in place of Father Octopus today. A deputy speaks to a driver who has run out of bandages and needs 2 more packs. Failing to locate the driver, the deputy was outraged that he had fled so quickly. The patient regains consciousness and thanks the doctor for the care he or she is providing. A giant octopus climbs onto an ambulance. A patient notices the cursed creature and wants to warn the doctor. He tells the deputy to just run away and leave him, but he says he's a doctor and he can't do that to a patient. The huge octopus turns its gaze from the heights of its gaze to the 2 men. He touches the doctor, asking if people have seen his dad. This is when a doctor trying to stop a bleeding patient thinks he's going to die here. Angry at not being answered, the octopus is going to attack the humans. Lastly, knowing that they are likely to die, the wounded man thanks the doctor as the octopus tentacle flies towards them. Suddenly, the octopus realizes that something strange is happening to him. Someone is dragging an octopus past the cars he crashed on the bridge. The deputy waiting to die is still moments away from realizing that the danger has passed. Suddenly, the deputy hears someone calling him. He turns around to see who it is. It turns out to be an orderly who has found a car and wants to load it with a patient to take him to the hospital. The deputy is very happy to see the driver of the ambulance. He thought he had escaped. The deputy is a little embarrassed at the thought. The driver, taking the patient under his arm together with the deputy, says that we'll talk later. Now it's important to get the patient to the hospital. When the doctor reminds him that he's talking to the director, the driver reminds him that the doctor is actually the deputy director. The octopus stolen from the bridge can't figure out where it ended up. It's still disoriented. John tells Lil Fan that he wants to play with the octopus too. Fan says that in that case he should jump in with them. Continuing to hold the huge creature, Fang says he's caught it and John can jump right onto the octopus. John agrees with Fan. He really likes this idea. He jumps off the bridge shouting Fan's name and flies for a while. Landing on the octopus's head apparently causes it great discomfort. Jean has a lot of fun on the head of the octopus with all his childlike directness. He pokes the octopus with his finger. The octopus swings its tentacles, wanting to throw John off his head. Suddenly, there is the sound of impact. Something happened to the octopus. John rolls down. Fang steps on the octopus tentacle, saying he was a very bad boy. Fang says the creature is somewhat aggressive, so he'll hold it, and adds that one part of the octopus fell off of him. John says it's probably okay for an octopus to have many more tentacles. But the octopus is in a lot of pain. He is writhing in agony and calls for his father's help. Not paying any attention to this, Fang says that John is right. For an octopus, losing a limb is really no big deal. For the pain they caused him, the octopus wants to kill John and Fan. He swings one of his whole tentacles at Fan. Fang habitually catches the giant creature's tentacle in flight. Clutching the tentacle, he jerks it sharply toward him with one hand. A crackling sound mingles with the unfortunate creature's scream as it loses another tentacle. An overjoyed Jean finds a barbecue somewhere under the bridge and says he's seen these things on TV. Next to him lay a whole bunch of broken-off octopus tentacles. It looked like Fang hadn't wasted any time. The poor creature curses at Fan as he breaks off more tentacles from it. He rams his remaining tentacles on Fan's head. The one in response simply bites one of the cursed creature's giant tentacles. John was about to eat the unfortunate creature's tentacle, but suddenly smells a pleasant odor. Octopus pays attention to the smell as well. Together with Fan, they freeze in search of where it's coming from. Octopus tentacle drizzled with golden butter is grilled. John rubs the tentacle with oil with a special brush, believing that the more oil, the better the flavor. Everyone, including the big octopus, is drooling over the delicious-smelling meat. The octopus has a terrible guess as to the nature of the dish from which such an odor is coming. Looking around, he realizes with horror that John is preparing his tentacles. Confirming his hunch, the John speaks directly about it by offering tentacles to Fan. John and Fan quickly eat all the octopus tentacles. Standing over the barbecue, John says this tentacle is the last one. The poor octopus cries and calls to his father for help for the umpteenth time. He has no more tentacles left, only his head. After thinking about it, he decides to eat the head of the octopus, and Fan encourages him to do so. On the grill, a still-living octopus tells his father that he will never see even its head again. Standing on the bus, Cyclops wonders where the monster went. His assistant managed to detect the monster's wave of energy. Quickly jumping off the bus, Cyclops looks at the tablet that shows the creature's location. The map clearly indicates that the creature is under the bridge near where the task force is located. When Cyclops arrives, he realizes that the energy comes from two of his old acquaintances, who lay down to sleep after a hearty lunch. The deputy wonders where the hound has gone when Cyclops turns his attention to the barbecue. A girl from Cyclops' team comes up and offers to wake up and question the two sleepers about the cursed creature. The one-eyed man, however, is against it. He asks a girl who is afraid of him, can they believe psychos, and gets a negative answer. He's outraged. How can she suggest trusting crazy people? The girl wonders if he's talking about himself. Cyclops tells the girl to never trust crazy people or he'll shave her bald. The girl doesn't understand how this is related. Despite the weirdness, she likes her boss. He can tell just by their clothes that these people are crazy. While the girl looks at Cyclops with adoring eyes, the assistant asks what to do if they find the creature. Realizing what really happened, the one-eyed man silently turns around to the lying guys. To the puzzled looks of his team, he heads over to Jean and Fan. Standing over them, he asks only one question. Was the octopus tasty? Through sleep, the comrades recall the tasty tentacles of the unfortunate creature and answer the question in the affirmative. Cyclops finally confirms his hunch. The creature has been found, the task is complete, but he feels no relief. There's a meeting at headquarters again about what to do with the wised-up damn creatures. The woman at the special screen talks about the new abilities of the cursed creatures. Many fighters have noticed that the beasts know how to suppress their power. Cyclops is unable to concentrate on the report. He is thinking about the patients who were able to defeat so many cursed creatures. Is it worth training them? He is still haunted by the painful memories of the acupuncture session John gave him. Just thinking about this episode of his life, Cyclops begins to tremble. As the woman finishes her report, Cyclops thinks it best not to bring up the unusually strong patients of the psychiatric clinic again. Everyone notices that the one-eyed man is not paying attention to the report, but is immersed in his own thoughts. The speaker is the leader of the strategic unit. Turns her attention to Cyclops, not really liking the fact that he is letting her report pass her ears. Crossing her arms on her hands, she addresses the one-eyed man directly and asks if he doubts her plan. Cyclops starts to panic. He has no idea what the plan is about, after all. Realizing that the one-eyed man wasn't following her words, she repeats again personally for him. Each of the 4 direction coaches will be sent to Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital to raise morale for 1 month. Touching his bald head with a graceful hand, she asks if anyone present has any questions. It is clear to everyone, however, that he is primarily interested in Cyclops' opinion, so the coaches are kept from asking questions. Looking at Cyclops, the leader of the strategic unit hints that she is primarily interested in Cyclops' opinion. He's a highly skilled tactical expert. Cyclops suddenly says that the task may be too difficult for newcomers. All 4 coaches are unanimously surprised by the strange words of the head of the task force. The woman, continuing to keep her hand on the one-eyed man's bald head, says that perhaps he meant that the task would be too easy. She thinks Cyclops, as an operative, is raring to go and explains to him that training fighters in a mental hospital will help them adapt to the unexpected. Their enemies are somewhat like mentally ill people, so they need training in a mental institution before they can go to war. Therefore, Cyclops can't avoid it either, no matter how much he wants to. To himself, One-Eyed realizes that psychos are just really scary to him. But the top-class tactician convinces all 4 coaches. The woman continues, in recent days, the cursed creatures have been appearing less and less frequently She believes it's their way of trying to disperse the hunter's attention. She also reports that a hierarchy is emerging among the cursed creatures. Those with high intelligence lead those who are dumber. All those gathered are listening attentively. They are alert to this information. The rapporteur reports that this has never happened before, and it poses a huge danger as no one knows what level their leaders are at. Finishing her report, she notes that they need more information. Another bright, clear day. The mental health park has been 3 days since the report. The antennae of the ant and the anteater join together, showing the great love between them. Ant is very happy that he has finally returned home after a long journey. From behind the bushes appears a hand that the ants mistake for divine. There are tears in the ant's eyes. Seemingly, how could this be possible? When a hand grabs a male ant and drags it somewhere. The hand drops the ant in another location not far from his house. The ant almost immediately returns to his beloved. John, to whom the hand belonged, is watching thoughtfully from behind the tall grass. But the hand once again snatches the unfortunate ant from the family. John pensively considers the ant. The ant thinks he is evil itself in the flesh. Fan looks for John. The friend responds to his call and climbs out of the grass. Rising to his feet, John is glad his friend is finally awake. John talks about the marvelous ant he discovered, then returns to the house no matter how far you drag it. Fan thinks it's funny. Fan slept for 3 days. John tells him that after eating the octopus, they were immediately taken to the clinic. John notes that while Fang was sleeping, he looked a lot like a pig. Fang wonders if he really looks like a pig. Fan tells that it wasn't just a dream he was put into sleep mode by a woman to break through his ceiling. The woman said he had reached T level. The ant is happy that the man is behind him chatting enthusiastically with his comrade. Happy and flushed, how is that possible asterisk, he tells his beloved that they can go home. Fang touches the wood with one finger. His touch causes a crack to run down the wood. There is a violent explosion and the tree splits in two. A beam of energy flies over the grass, cutting off the blades of grass that were unlucky enough to grow too high. John was very happy that Fang had gotten stronger, because before, to knock down a tree, he at least needed to pound on the tree with his fist. The poor ant watches doomedly as the huge tree falls on him. He never has time to fully realize what's going on. The tree falls to the ground with a loud sound, killing the unfortunate ant. John is sure that what made Fan stronger was his galactic circulation technique. Fan did not dissuade him out of the kindness of heart that is peculiar to him. The screen expresses its displeasure at having its work attributed to itself. The ant's beloved cries over his dead body because only recently it seemed that everything would be fine. Suddenly, another ant approaches the reader and comforts the unhappy widow. Number 1 is dead, but her other husbands are still alive, crawling out of every crevice to comfort her. Wiping her eyes with a small handkerchief. Where do ants get handkerchiefs? She thanks all her husbands. People are crowded around the tree. They can't understand what kind of sliech fell the tree. Some are happy that there were no casualties. The electric tower is highly energized. In real life, you really shouldn't climb it. John asks Fan if he's sure he wants to do what he's up to. John heard on TV that it's pretty dangerous. In case something happens, he won't be able to help. Fan refers to the psycho in his head. John says the head of the clinic doesn't recommend believing psychos. Fang says he may not trust the voice in his head, but he trusts his friend Jean. John says that he trusts Fan too. The friends decide that if they trust each other, nothing can stop them. A friend isn't sure he can get Fan to the dangerous electric thing, but Fan notes that he can get there himself. Fan quickly hops on the transformer. I think that's what the thing is called. John is delighted that Fan can jump so high. With a loud sound, a metal capsule falls to the ground. The doctor treating Fan for bulimia dropped the object when he saw what was going on here. He comes to his senses a bit. He calls the head of the clinic for help. At the top, Fang says that he has succeeded in getting discharges, probably much more powerful this time, through his body. Fan's hair stands up. Some cultural reference is likely here. Fan's hair is finally ruffled, but he feels an incredible surge of energy. The doctor contacts Mr. Shea on the phone. He says they have a problem. Again, patients from the same room. The head of the clinic says an ambulance is on its way, but the doctor thinks it's time to book a place in the cemetery. Fan's burned face lights up in a bright, blinding light. The transformer explodes, a very powerful explosion with sparks and flames everywhere. Lightning Fang is flung to the ground by the blast wave. Falling to the ground, it still sparks. The grass around it burns. The orderlies surround Fan. They are sure that he is dead and cannot be touched lest he be electrocuted. Fan's body continues to scorch the grass around him with a hiss. Jean quickly makes his way past the orderlies, cordoning off the place. Under the shouts of the orderlies, he runs to Fan, whose body is still traveling with electric shocks. Raising a hand, Fan forbids his friend to come closer. All black, he claims he's still alive, just a little tired. Fang said he was very sleepy, his hand dropping to the ground. John touches Fan's electrified hand. A ringing sound is heard. The electric shock throws Fan away. Spinning in flight, he hits the ground. The doctor who dialed Shay tells him that he needs to see what's going on in person, also wondering if he should wait for the ambulance to arrive. Seeing Fan's injuries, the doctor who's going to operate on him is weeping. The doctor says he is not omnipotent and unlikely to be able to save such a burned patient. A nurse wipes the doctor's sweat while he tells him that even though the sensors show the patient is alive, 90% of his body is already burned, he can't be saved. Coming out of the operating room, the woman informs the deputy director that Dr. Lee has refused to operate on the patient. The deputy says that the patient must be fought for until he takes his last breath. If the doctor refuses, he will do the operation himself. The nurse is amazed at the deputy director's dedication. Todd adjusting his robe to prepare for a complex operation. The sign above the surgery doors is lit up. The surgery has been going on for 10 hours. Finally, the light changes to green. The long operation is over. A tired deputy finishes the surgery and tells me to bandage the patient and move him back to the room. A nurse receives the team and informs them that the head of the psychiatric clinic has come to the hospital and wants to meet. The head waits a long time for the deputy outside the operating room. The deputy is furious that he dared to show up after dumping patients on him again. He even let Jean and Fan get electrocuted again. The deputy swings the OR door wide open, starting to yell at Shay. He tells Shay he'll never forgive him for sending his special patients to the hospital time after time. Shaw smilingly says they can discuss that later. Right now he wanted to ask about the client card at the hospital. The deputy is blown away by Shi's words. He is angry beyond belief. Looking around, he sees a panel with a massive fire extinguisher. Grabbing the fire extinguisher from the panel, he lunges at Shay with it. Two doctors watch in horror from the operating room. They try to restrain the deputy so he doesn't maim Shay, saying it's against the law to kill. Shay realizes that with his last line, he must have overflowed the deputy's patience. The orderlies barely restrain the deputy while he raises a fire extinguisher above his head to kill the head of the clinic. They say that after the deputy needs sleep. Shay continues to stand nearby watching the deputy's breakdown. Lee finally puts down the fire extinguisher, sending the head of the clinic to hell. He falls asleep in the arms of the orderlies. The head of the clinic innocently wonders what's wrong with wanting to save some money. The next morning, John sleeps by Van's bedside, sitting on his lap. John remained perfectly fine, just passed out from the electric shock. A blue screen informs Fan that the body training has been successful and a new level of key practice has been opened. Fang pats his peacefully sleeping neighbor on the head in an effort to wake his friend up. John wakes up wiping his eyes, coming away from the dream. Finally coming to his senses, he's glad his friend is awake. Throwing off her burnt skin, Fang begins to look like a Greek statue again. With a loud clatter, a metal tray falls to the floor, its contents scattering to the ground. The nurse cannot understand how the patient can be in such good condition. He was burned yesterday. He was barely saved from death. A lot of people come to the ward. The doctor examines Fan with interest. The nurse says that the skin was still yesterday all burned. Now the former emergency patient looks perfect. His smooth skin is glistening. All the visitors rave about Fan's beauty in one voice. Their scrutiny embarrasses the guy and he looks away. Cyclops is told by phone about the incident with Fan and Jean. He decides that they are looking for death since they climbed the electrical tower. He thought about training them, but now he thinks the issue has resolved itself. One-Eyed says that even though they're crazy, he's worried about them since they were in the same room. He wants to visit their graves. The device informs Cyclops that a money lover is calling him. He informs a stunned Cyclops that the patients have survived. He wonders how this is possible since even level 3 fighters can't survive such a thing. One-Eyed thinks John and Fan might have a level 4 or so. A level 4 talent deserves improvement. Cyclops continues to ponder. Shu says he can check again, but John and Fan definitely live otherwise and can't be. The head of the clinic leaves the grounds of someone else's hospital with a thermos. The orderlies are running after him, asking why he's leaving, because he wanted to talk to the deputy about getting a membership card. Shay notices that it doesn't matter anymore. As the head of the clinic leaves, the deputy chases him around the hospital. The orderlies are shocked by Shay's words and ask if he is serious. The head of the clinic tells the orderlies that the deputy exhausted by the surgery needs sleep. It's best to leave him alone for now. Shay himself wouldn't mind a nap either. In one of the wards, Li Yang's lover is spoon-feeding him, worried that his beloved won't burn himself. The gaze of a happy and fed Lee falls on the girl's bag, which shows a crack. Ta tells him not to worry. Even though the bag is torn, it doesn't matter as she can still use it. Lee sharply replies that it matters how he can let his beloved use a torn bag. Grunting and turning on his side, he starts looking for something. He finds and holds out a card to his beloved that has some money on it. "You can go and buy yourself a purse." The girl gratefully takes the card about the lover, saying he is very cool. Tucking the card into the pocket of her dress, she tells whether Uncle Wang has decided to visit him in the hospital. Lee says that's a very good thing, because he's been wanting to thank his uncle for introducing them for a long time. The girl, embarrassed, says she's not that good. Lee chuckles with kindness at his lover's shyness. Someone's faceted vision surveys the hospital waiting room. Uncle Wang, going to visit his nephew, doesn't realize that it was probably a hallucination. It started because he ate a lot of fish. A cursed fly, a parasitic creature of the 3rd level, sits on a piece of fish. Uncle's hand reaches for the piece. He didn't realize there was a parasite sitting on a piece of fish. Van greedily devours a piece of fish that shows a black spot from a fly burrowed inside. The infected person begins to cast a shadow in the form of a huge fly. He is unaware of this, however. Standing over the plates of food, he is satisfied with the fact that he has eaten a delicious meal. The nurse sees the dark, shivering silhouette of a creature in the hallway. For a while, she can't get a good look at what's in front of her. When she finally realizes what it is, the pupils of the nurse's eyes dilate in horror. Before the hallway fills with her screaming monster, a flyman stands in front of her. The flyman is not pleased with the girl's loud screaming in punishment. He wants to suck all her blood. The monster viciously slaps the nurse in the face with its sharp paw and throws a bloody nurse into one of the wards. Coincidentally, this happens to be the ward where Jean and Fan are, and they are surprised by what has happened. The poor woman wheezes and screams for help as the monster takes her by the throat with his scary paw. She keeps calling for help while the monster says he just has to slit her throat. After all, it's the only way to get her to stop yelling. The world blurs in the nurse's eyes as the monster strangles her. Tears flow from her eyes. She panics while the monster's huge hand continues to strangle her. A sharp needle is thrust through the suit into the monster's free arm. Looking at the monster, John tells him that the monster is terminally ill, and something inside him is clenching and about to explode. John says he knows acupuncture techniques, and despite the appearance of a flyman, he will save him. The monster reprimands Jean that he must be looking for death, since he dared to treat him like that. The flyman releases his hand for a punch, throwing the unfortunate nurse aside. There is a thud as she crashes into the wall. The cursed creature is about to strike John, but then something distracts him. Moving to the scene of the event, Fang clutches the monster's hand tightly. He says no one dares to hurt Mr. John. John asks his friend to ask the monster if he is willing to be treated. Fan agrees to act as a negotiator for medical services for the flyman. Negotiator asks the monster if he wants to use acupuncture. The monster yells that he'll rip the monster's throat out. Fan breaks the cursed creature's arm with a loud crunch. Holding the remains of the monster's arm in his hands, he asks, "Does he want to be healed?" The monster is getting worried, but still thinks he can kill Fan. With a buzzing sound, he lunges at the offender, but catching him is not so easy. During one of the monster's attacks, Fang looks at him with an unkind look in his eyes, a red glow appearing in his eyes. Seizing the moment, he grabs the fly man by the transparent fly wing. The monster is perplexed as to how a human could be fast enough to catch him. Fan's eyes continue to burn with the same bloody light. With a loud slurp, he rips off one wing of the fly man. The man screams in pain and begs for it to stop. Blood continues to drip from the torn-off fly wing in Fan's hands. The creature, breathing heavily, sits under the ward wall with a torn wing. Fang asks if a creature that has been badly injured wants medical attention. Fan takes the monster by the suit with one hand and pulls it toward him. Pulling the flyman to him, he says it's worth letting him get acupuncture. Holding the monster firmly by the neck and leaning it toward his friend, Fang says that the flyman wants to try acupuncture. John sighs and asks why Fang is holding the creature like that. The one says that this is how the monster held the poor woman, and he wants to see if the monster likes this position now. Smiling and showing the OK sign with his fingers, John says that Fan's idea is a good one. Acupuncture Master says that the creature is too triggered by its illness, so he should hurry up and inserts a needle into the monster's head. A nurse with a bloodied face folds her hands in a prayerful gesture as she watches the creature squirm from John's treatment. With the flyman's entire head already pinned with needles, Jean applies the technique of intergalactic transfer. Concentrating, John is about to insert the last needle. The flyman's whole nature tells him that there is great danger coming from John. At the last moment, when the needle is already close to the monster's face, the monster says to wait. He is a parasitic fly inhabiting the bodies of humans. Killing him, Fan will kill the host. Fan puzzled. The fly is thinking out his plan. He's waiting for pseudo-morality to stop Gene from killing him outright. When he finally makes up his mind, the fly man uses the larvae he deposited in each person he touched. As long as there is food, the monster can regenerate its knowledge and power, and even become a parasitic fly again. The monster delights in thinking that John is in the throes of a moral dilemma, trying to find a way to save a man and kill a fly at the same time. The 13th needle stabs into the head of the fly man, who clearly didn't expect this turn. Wiggling, the man-fly doesn't understand why John didn't even hesitate. Did that person not even care about human morality? Falling to the floor, the fly can't understand why John thinks differently than other people. After the fly man has fallen knocked to the floor, the fly essence begins to separate from the human essence. In the ward with the beloved Liu begin to do strange things. Her eyes begin to glow red. She says the word daddy. The girl's body begins to transform into a mushy body. A former psychiatric hospital orderly is terrified as he tries to understand what has become of his lover. The girl's transformation is over. Fly woman sadly says that daddy is dead. The orderly prudently hides from the creature behind the bed. A green card given to Lee falls out of the woman's pocket. While she can't see crawling under the bed, an orderly takes the card and zippers out of the room before the fly woman wakes up. As he closes the door and pushes his body against it, the orderly thinks he almost died. The woman begins punching through the wooden doors with powerful blows. A nurse walking by wonders what they're doing here. It's probably some kind of love thing. In desperation, Lee cries out that he will accept his beloved if she gains weight, even forgive her for cheating on him and raising someone else's child. But he's screaming that he'll never accept that she's so ugly. The monster's arm smashes through the door right above the stunned Lee's head. Peeking out through the hole punched in the door, the creature stares intently at Lee. Suddenly, a human hand grabs the orderly by the collar of his hospital pajamas. The deputy director of the hospital silently pushes Lee away from the door of the room. Standing in a fighting stance, the deputy holds a large sword in his hands. Lee looks at the deputy with adoration. He thinks he drew his sword to protect Lee. Watching this whole scene is a fly woman who has come out of the chamber. In response to the orderly's words, Lee recalls how he got into this situation. Lee had folded himself into a ball and was sniffling peacefully in his office asleep after a hard 10-hour surgery. Suddenly, he remembers something and jumps up sharply. The memory seems to give him strength. Sitting on the bed, Lee remembers that Shay asked for a hospital membership card to be made for him. His gaze falls on a large sword standing as a decoration against the wall of the study. A moment later, the deputy clutches the hilt of the large sword tightly. Holding a large sword all wrapped up in rage, he goes to issue Shu his membership card. Present tense, the woman flies, crunching her neck toward the deputy and Lee. The deputy tells ambulance driver Juan that the hospital has been attacked by a cursed creature and a SWAT team needs to be called. The one shouts back with the phone in his hands that he has already called the squad and the squad is on its way. The angry fly woman sends Lee to hell and heads for him. He replies that she lied to him and she's not really a good girl at all. The deputy knocks Lee off his feet and pins him to the floor, taking the monster out of harm's way. Lee looks admiringly at the deputy who saved him for the second time. Someone pulls out the witch cards and holds up 3 cards with 2 fingers. Using the technique, he throws 3 cards at the cursed creature. Stinging vines begin to grow from the cards glued to the body of the fly woman. Soon, she is all entangled in green vines and can't move. A special unit arrives and engages the cursed creature. The bald man standing in front of his comrades is using the golden armor technique. A woman from the SWAT team delayed to help the victims tells Li Huang and the deputy to leave. The cursed creature bursts into bright flames while making loud noises. The swordsman begins to use the mind stand technique. His sword hangs in the air next to his hand, enveloped in tongues of blue flame. The sword-guided technique flies into the monster in a blue light. It slams into the fly and pierces it. It looks like that one can't survive. The operatives who run up tell them to leave the rest to them. The Cyclops assistant in the blue uniform says that the fly's energy is gone, which means it's dead. He adds that on the way here, they discovered a fly that could be the woman's parent and are sending a special unit to her, at which time the body twitches. His food tablet reports that a massive energy surge has been detected. The power surge is so strong that the tablet estimates the team can't handle it. It requests support. Another creature emerges from the body of a fly killed by the fighters. The hospital staff is running away in fear, screaming that many are already dead. A huge brat with 3 heads, seeking retribution, approaches them, breaking everything in its path. In the crowd of fleeing people are the special patients, John and Fan. John doesn't understand why they are running away and why they didn't help the injured. At this time, Fang tells him to look at the fly. A huge 7th-level cursed creature says they managed to kill it in its old body, but now it's reborn. John doesn't understand why Fan wants him to look at the fly. He stares at it intently, asking if it doesn't look cute. 7 minutes before the 7th-level fly appears in the chamber, John examines the half-divided body of the flyman. Crying, he doesn't understand why the patient died after his treatment. Fan comforts him by telling him to just try harder next time. Behind the scenes, Uncle Wang's soul joining the creatures killed by the strange couple is outraged. John says the man died because of his treatment, and since the head of the clinic said it's illegal to kill people, he'll probably go to jail. Behind the scenes, Uncle Wang's soul says he wants to see them get the punishment they deserve. Fan's fist smashes through the glass window of a hospital room. Over the clinking of broken glass, Fang tells a distraught Jean that they'd better just run. All the creatures he kills, off-screen, are shocked at this decision by the heroes. Jean says that running away is a lot of fun, so he agrees to run away with Fan. While Fang helps Jean climb onto the windowsill, a fly-beaten nurse approaches them. She doubts whether she should tell them, since they're crazy, but thanks Jean and Fan for saving her. Fang and John, standing on the windowsill, are terribly pleased with the nurse's words. Fan jumps into the hospital courtyard from the ward window, landing on his feet. Looking around, he tells Jean to jump. He's checked it's not fatal. At this time, the screams of people fleeing from the cursed creature are heard. The Energy Wave Detection Center detected a surge of Level 7 creation energy on the hospital grounds. A Level 4 team is in place, but that's not enough. We need more reinforcements. Cyclops is determined to come to the aid of the fighters and is already heading for the exit. But the woman stops him. She says he can't go in this mess, the ringmaster has to show up. Lee goes on to tell Cyclops that as a national hero, he should stay to defend the center. She points out the fighters who are best suited for this mission. Tian King's team's special-level fighter squad had just returned from a mission. The woman claims they can defeat a Level 8 creature. John asks if the fly seems nice to Fan, if he's hungry again. The fly is terribly angry at the couple's words. The monster is going to kill them. The blue screen reports that the cursed creature's energy is enough to satisfy his hunger for 7 weeks. Fly reaches out with his huge paw to Jean with Fan while he's busy with the screen in his head. Screen tells Fan the method of cooking the fly, and also says that its meat has 60 times more protein than beef. Fang continues to think about making a fly, while the man lying in the bushes tells them to run. Fang extends a finger toward the paw of a huge fly flying toward him. Koga Fang lightly touches the flyman's paw. Something epic happens. There is an explosion and one of the monster's heads is blown away by a shining beam. A bald fighter from a Special Forces unit wonders if it's a hallucination. The giant creature is writhing in agony and screaming with blood flowing from where its head was severed. John tells Fan that Fan's strength has increased greatly in the days he has been unconscious. The voice in Fan's head said that the full power of the energy cultivation technique was roughly equal to the punching power of a Level 9 fighter. Fan wants to kill the monster with it, but John is puzzled as to how Fan can reach the creature. Fan demonstrates how he wants to get to the monster. By pushing himself off the ground, he jumps. Fang flies high up on the spot from which he started, puffs of dust rising. The monster points one of its heads towards Fan on his chest, showing the wound from the impact. The cursed creature strikes Fan with its head, and he flies to the ground. The brat raises a huge clawed hand over Fan to strike him. While flying a long distance, Fan lands on his feet. With a cry of die, the fly hits the spot where the Fan is standing with its paw. The fly's claws strike Fan's body, unable to pierce it. The screen reports the activation of the defense ability, Golden Body. Fan's hand grabs the cursed creature's deadly claw. With one hand, he pulls the heavy arm of the giant fly away from him and strikes the paw with a hard blow that literally splits it open. Sitting on the floor, John can't understand why Fang thinks the fly is cute. It's really gross. While the monster's arm is torn to pieces under Fan's mighty blow. He worries that he and Fan have very different tastes, which means they can't avoid fighting. Fan, jumping on the fly, strikes it again. The fly yells in pain. John thinks his comrade must be very hungry to eat such a cute fly. But he won't eat it himself because it's so disgusting he can't help himself. Fan runs to Zhenya. He pulls the giant fly's body behind him with one hand. Fan only wants to suggest that Zhenya begin the process of eating the cursed creature. But he shyly says he doesn't think the fly is cute, which means he and his friend have different tastes. Fan, with a calm expression, throws the fly carcass, tossing it into the air. He calms a distraught Jean by telling him that he too thinks the fly is not cute, but nasty. Jean is very happy that he and Fan have similar views on the nature of cuteness. The voice in Fan's head is outraged, because the fly's energy could have been enough for him for a long time. Fan repeats that he doesn't think flies are cute. The screen says that even though normal people don't eat flies, he and Jean are nuts and might try it. A collapsed hospital, 2 fighters hold back debris from falling with protective equipment. The medic girl from the group, meanwhile, treats the injured with her techniques. She says the boss and the reinforcements are close by. You just have to hold out until he arrives. Meanwhile, a tablet in the hand of a stoned operative reports that Tahina, the larva founder, has been eliminated. Jean recalls that before Fan thought the fly could be eaten, they wanted to run. Fan doesn't mind, but he is very hungry and tired. The screen advises that he should think about eating a large fly. An exhausted Fang falls from his feet to the ground in front of a surprised John. The screen reports that the host has never expended so much energy at once and now needs replenishment. John, crying, bent over Fan's body, screaming for him not to die. A medic is moving towards them. SWAT team members are following her. The medic touches Jean's crying and asks what happened here. The bald fighter asks where the level 7 demon has disappeared to. One of the fighters notes that he can still feel remnants of the demon's energy in the air. A fighter in yellow beach shorts notices the body of a large fly. He beckons his companions over to the corpse of the fly, saying that the demon is already dead. As the fighters approach and begin to survey the area, they can't figure out what happened. Sacred Duty Squad warriors Hu Feng and Su Duochu wonder who could have killed such a powerful creature. Squad medic Zhou Xiaoqiu examines Zhang and decides that he is generally fine, but his energy is depleted, which is strange for a normal person. The fighters are going into the building to help the people who are left there. Xiao Kai replies that she understood and will join them soon. Meanwhile, a wounded fighter from their squad, of which she is the eldest, calls out to her. Pointing at John and Fan, he says they killed the demon. Here, the bald fighter, unable to continue any further, starts coughing up blood. The older one moves to him and tells the fighter not to waste his strength. She applies a medical technique. Above her hand, a balloon appears. The ball plunges into the fighter's body. It is enveloped by a green glow, probably partially healing his wounds. The girl says it's good to have an eyewitness. He needs to rest by the tree while she helps her comrades in the building. Finished, she leaves the wounded fighter as well as Jean and Fan. Ambulances arrive at the hospital and begin treating the injured. The orderly tells Jean that there are no serious injuries on Fan, so it's probably just fainting. He adds that if Fan comes to his senses, you can call your family to pick them up. Fang opens his eyes and comes to his senses. John is very happy about this. The wounded fighter looks at Fan with respect and calls out to him, but he doesn't notice him. As the fighter continues to wave his arms around, the friends remember that they killed a man. They decide to run away because there's no telling what they'll get for murder. The fighter watches helplessly as John and Fan crawl away from the scene, camouflaged under the bushes. Out of resentment, the fighter almost cries when an orderly comes up to him and asks where John and Fan are. He brought them buns. John says it's their first time out with Fan. He's surprised to see so many strangers. Fan tells him not to worry. His friend will protect him. He says he'll help his friend in any way he can. They walk holding hands, repeating that they are best friends while passers-by think these two must be insane. Lying under the very bridge where they killed the octopus monster, the friends begin to remember how tasty its meat was. Off-screen, among the other creatures killed by the two heroes, Wang begins to reason that octopuses are really tasty. The octopus soul can't stand it when Wang starts to praise the flavor of octopus meat. With a fully stuffed belly, he says that people are delicious too, not just meat, but souls. Apparently, he ate Van. Jean calls out to Fan and tells him that someone is being abused nearby. He points to a car with a bound boy inside. In the van, after pointing a gun at the boy, the kidnapper calls billionaire Yankai and tells him they have his son. Threatening him with a gun, he forces the boy to say hello to his father. The kidnapper says if they don't get the 50 million, the father can say goodbye to his son. To the man's surprise, the boy interrupts him and says that 50 million is very little. Previous kidnappers started at 500. The accomplice says the guy is right. 50 million is really too little for such a venture. A man talking to the boy's father tells the man that the situation has changed. Now 500 million is needed, or else. Then the boy interrupts him again, saying he's doing it all wrong. It is necessary to specify specific deadlines and measures for non-compliance so that the kidnappers have leverage. The kidnappers look at the boy in surprise, realizing that he may understand more about these matters than they do. The kidnapper is much more explicit in his demands of the boy's father, all because the boy sits next to him and tells him what to say. When the boy tells the kidnapper to say he has friends in the police force, he interjects what to do if he has no one. The boy explains that it's just a bluff, a psychological game. After finishing his conversation with the boy's clues, the kidnapper drops the call. The kidnapper is very pleased with his increased negotiation skills, and his companion confirms that his dialogue was quite good. The boy, however, points out that although he didn't talk too badly in general, he spent too much time talking. The call will be traceable. They have a caller tracking device at home, and in 10 minutes his personal security will be here. The kidnapper points a gun at the boy in anger and yells that he is trying to fool him. The boy explains that the kidnapper could not remember what he told him, and so had to repeat every phrase to him, which took a considerable amount of time. The kidnapper screams that if he doesn't get his 500 million immediately, he'll blow the boy's brains out while his accomplice tries to calm him down. The boy nonchalantly says they have about 9 minutes left. At this time, John peeks in the door of the van and asks why people are making so much noise. Everyone is shocked by the sudden appearance of Jean without realizing what is going on. The kidnapper says they don't need witnesses, so Jean's out of luck today. Pointing his gun at the unexpected guest, he shoots. A bullet slices through the air, almost hitting John's face. But Fan just catches her with his hand at the last moment. Fang is very angry that his friend was tried to be killed, a smoking bullet clutched in his hand. Fang says the kidnapper wanted to shoot and it hurts a lot. John asks for help to get revenge. But he reminds his friend that he should not kill anyone because it is illegal to kill people, and they are on the run. The shocked kidnapper asks Fan how he managed to stop a bullet with his bare hands, whether he's even human. The kidnapper starts to say that even if Fang is a demon, he is not afraid, but he doesn't have time to finish because Fang punches him in the stomach. The impact is so severe that the man flies out of the van along with the door. After flying a few meters, it splashes into the water with a resounding thud. His accomplice gets out of the van and runs to save his brother. John wonders, will the kidnapper live after Fan's punch? Fan says he'll hit him lightly and the kidnapper will survive. John tells the boy that they chased away the people who tried to hurt him. The boy asks to untie him. Being unleashed, the boy notes in a voiceover that Fang and John are not quite normal. Noticing the stamp on their pajamas, he realizes that they are from the cheeky Qingshan hospital. Fang tells John that he's hungry again. The blue screen resents him for having the opportunity to eat a rank 7 creature. The boy says he's taking the boys out to eat as a thank you for saving him. Those genuinely pleased with his offer, Fan's appetite is hard to overestimate. The guy adds that we have to hurry. His guards will be here soon. We have to run. A helicopter arrives on the scene. A man with a loudspeaker announces that the young gentleman's safety must be taken care of first. Several men in uniforms are seen descending the rope with more helicopters. It seems the boy's father is indeed a billionaire. The guard asks the hapless kidnappers who they are and what they are doing here. That's when the man with the glasses gets a clear idea of how to get out of the situation. He says a handsome boy was kidnapped by 2 men in pajamas. His brother tried to intervene and paid the price. He claims his brother was beaten up just for asking if everything was okay. The guard continues to question the man in glasses as his accomplice comes to his senses. The shocked kidnapper with glasses quickly figures out what to do so that his brother doesn't say too much and be identified by his voice. Feigning a brotherly embrace, he piles on his brother with force, knocking the air out of his lungs. The guard is trying to figure out why the man's voice sounded so familiar. The guard has no time to figure out where he heard the man's voice, but he gets a transmission that the target's location has been located. Standing over his brother's body, the kidnapper with glasses watches the guard walk away. He praises himself satisfied that at the critical moment he was not confused and managed to get out of it. Sitting near a tree near the ruined hospital, an eyewitness to Fan's adventures tells how skillfully he defeated a fly. Everyone agrees that Fang must be very strong, but Wang Yue wonders where he went. The frustrated narrator says the heroes ignored him and ran away. The girl says that this is a real sign of a master, to do heroic deeds and not to chase fame. Baldy says he won't let the heroes be forgotten. He'll draw portraits and give them to the information department to distribute. He takes a concentrated pencil drawing. The attendees look at this one with admiration. When he finishes drawing, he begins to say that he wanted to study to be an artist, and his portraits are like 2 drops of water similar to the original. The fighters gathered around the painting begin to praise it, saying that the characters on it as alive and in general, the picture is the height of realism. The fighter with the beard wonders if he sees the same pattern as the others. The drawing looks like the scribbles of a 6-year-old. The fighter thinks that if he talks about it, he'll be kicked out of the squad again. The building of an expensive restaurant is hosting special guests. Inside, John and Fang and the child who invited them are sitting inside, and there are a bunch of dishes on the table. Two waitresses discuss whether their new customers have escaped from the hospital and whether they have enough money to pay. One of them recalls wearing those pajamas in a mental institution. To avoid pissing them off, she decides to serve them normally and call the police at the last moment when they can't pay. The boy wonders if Jean and Fan are full. Of course, the answer is somewhat obvious. Fang, sitting next to a stack of dirty plates, says he's still hungry. John, on the other hand, is fed up and thanks the boy for being such a good man, feeding and watering them. John introduces himself to the boy. The boy says back that his name is Qian Xiaobao, but they can just call him Xiaobao. Since Fan is not full, the boy orders more food. The waitress brings more dishes with a smile. And more dishes, taking away a stack of plates, the waitress starts to worry. She's more worried about them not being able to pay her back, though, which she's prepared for. And the fact that Fan, who has already eaten 7 servings, will die and the restaurant will have to pay compensation. Xiaobao once again tiredly asks Fan if he is full. Fang says no, but the voice in his head said he couldn't get enough. John decides to hint to Fan to tell Xiaobao that he is full, but he hints so loudly that Xiaobao hears everything. After that, the trio led by Xiaobao is about to leave the restaurant. The waitress calls the police and is going to say that 3 customers don't have any money. But then the payment for 83500 yuan comes through. The boy tells the waitress in a bossy way that he doesn't need the check. The waitress can't come to her senses and starts talking nonsense into the phone. Because of this, the policeman concludes that she herself is mentally ill. Fan points to a building he's seen on TV and therefore knows it's fun. Xiaobao realizes that he's talking about Video Game World and realizes that the patients in the mental hospital have hardly had the opportunity to visit there. The video game world is crowded. They are crowded near the slot machines and are having a passionate time. John and Xiaobao stood in front of the machine playing some kind of fighting game. Xiaobao wins for the umpteenth time. John is somewhat disheartened by this. He asks Fan to avenge him by ceding his seat to him, probably thinking that his fighting abilities persist in the game world. However, to John's disappointment, Fang also loses a round to Xiaobao. The boy, bragging, says that he never loses at this game. He has played it so often that even if he wanted to, he couldn't lose. Fang, in front of the astonished Xiaobao, simply smacks his hand into the slot machine screen, disabling it. Fang asks if he won by killing the machine. Xiaobao says that Fang won. The visitors are upset that they can't play fights now. John is happy that Fan helped him get revenge. Xiaobao notes that although Fan and John are not adequate, they are fun to be with. He wonders aloud if Fan's strength is too great for a normal person because when he hit the kidnapper, it seemed that the kidnapper was finished. Fang, however, says he has no strength, he is very tired and hungry. Meanwhile, a red dot appears on his forehead. A shot occurs. From a sniper rifle, a bullet hits Fan in the head. To the shouts of his companions, he flies to the floor of the arcade. Xiaobao's guards break into the building through the windows, scaring the hell out of visitors. The guards point their guns at John, yelling at him not to move, one of them clamping Xiaobao's mouth with his hand. John tries to pump his friend, saying he's scared. The guard repeats the command not to move, otherwise John will be shot in the forehead. John asks Fan to wake up because he said it hurts to be shot. Seeing that bad things are happening to his friends, Xiaobao tries to free his mouth. Finally, he succeeds. He gives the guards a command not to shoot. Too late, however, one of the guards manages to shoot John. At the last moment, Fan's hand pushes John away from the bullet flying at him. The guard who shot John can't understand how it happened. In the next instant, Fang firmly gripped his gun with one hand. With reddened eyes, he breaks the guard's gun, the guard's hands beginning to shake. John takes the guard by the neck with one hand and lifts him into the air. All the guards point their guns at Fan, who continues to hold one of them by the neck. The guards can't figure out what kind of monster is in front of them because a human can't survive a headshot. Xiaobao orders them to lay down their weapons. These people have done him no wrong. And in fact, they are his friends. The guards look at Xiaobao trying to digest his order. Finally, they lower their pistols to the ground with some relief. Fan continues to hold the guard by the neck, saying that the guard opened fire without understanding. Xiaobao, on behalf of his personal guard, apologizes to the two friends. He takes a deep bow to Fan, emphasizing his apology. Fan continues to hold the guard by the neck in the air. Xiaobao says that if Fang considers him a friend, he should let the guard go. It turns out to be the head of the personal guard. Fang looks at Xiaobao and the red fire in his eyes slowly goes out. John approaches them, repeating Xiao Bao's words that they are friends, and friends should protect and forgive each other. The words finally reach Fan and he releases the guard's neck. Staff members run up to the head, eager to know if he's okay. Xiao Bao sighs in relief as he realizes that the situation has been resolved. Just then, Fang passes out in front of the boy and falls to the floor. The friends encircle Fan, who has fallen into anabiosis after his powers have been drained. After examining Fan, John realizes that he just fell asleep and looks like a piglet again. He tells Xiao Bao that Fang slept for 3 days last time, and since he can't sleep on the bare floor, he asks Xiao Bao to take him to the clinic. As the assistant opens the limousine doors in front of Xiao Bao, he listens to the report. He turns to the television screen as the announcer tells him that a demon of the 7th rank has been defeated by unknown masters. The screen shows a picture drawn by a bald fighter. Xiao Bao, seeing the scribbles, decides that the people from the special unit are obviously crazy. Xiao Bao tells the aide to go to the hospital, his friend sleeping peacefully in the other compartment of the limo. The assistant asks Xiao Bao if he should look for his kidnappers, who says that they have already been mocked by nature. At the same time, one of the kidnappers beats up his brother, saying he almost died from his blow. In the headquarters of the fighters cannot understand why no one has not yet reported the discovery of the masters. Probably they are well hidden. One of the fighters can't understand if they really think they can find someone from a picture they put on the news. A female coach runs up to the fighters and puts the drawing on the table in anger. She can't understand who allowed this to be aired. Is everyone out of their minds? She claims that the demonstration of the drawing has dealt a huge blow to the image of the special forces, and now the internet is writing all sorts of things about them. The artist asks if people are praising his abilities. Ta, however, disappoints him by shouting that commenters can't understand how mentally normal people could post such a thing. She specifically addresses the 4 8th-ranked fighters, saying that they should have known what they were doing. As punishment, she revokes the team's vacation and sends them to help coach the rookies in a mental hospital. 4 fighters resent being sent to babysit rookies even though they're already at rank 8. The woman screams that they should have thought of this earlier despite the fact that the squad is in the top 3. They are making too many mistakes. The artist is upset. He realizes that his comrades just didn't want to offend him, so they didn't say the drawing was bad. The bearded fighter thinks he's fine. The comrades are just being very kind and trying not to hurt the artist. But they keep telling the frustrated artist that the painting is just perfect. The characters are as lifelike, and they don't understand why others didn't like it. The bearded fighter realizes he is somewhat out of their company. Cyclops approaches a group of fighters, complaining that he just got back and they're giving him trouble again. He asks what's so absurd they put on the air, then his eyes fall on the drawing. A fighter skeptical of the artist's talent is happy that someone else thinks the drawing is incongruous. But then the head recognizes the people depicted in the drawing. Annoyed, he is unable to hide it. The skeptic is amazed that the head recognized the masters of drawing and thinks that if so, the head problems are likely to be his. She calls Deputy Lee at the hospital and sends his condolences about the 7th-level monster attack and the destruction it brought. Lee replies that there are many wounded, and he hopes that those killed by the demon can rest in peace. Shu tells the deputy to rest well because there are still patients who need his help. Lee tells the head doctor that 2 of his special patients were in the hospital when the cursed creature attacked. If patients are nowhere to be found after an attack with such a powerful demon, Shu interrupts Lee, saying she understands where he's going. Lee tells her coworker to brace herself and not let herself get discouraged. For a second, both are sadly silent at the telephone handsets. Immediately, slight smiles appear on their lips. Finally, the nightmare that had haunted them for so long was over. She is immersed in philosophical musings about life and death standing at the window. He's interrupted by an orderly running into his office with the news. He says some kid standing outside brought John and Fan to the hospital. Shu asks with secret hope. Perhaps the orderly is talking about the bodies of patients. The orderly informs Shay that the 2 special patients live. She realizes that his dreams of a quiet life are not destined to come true. The news literally shatters him to pieces. She calls Deputy Lee lying in the hospital room again. He tells Lee, who picks up the phone, that he was wrong to ask for a season ticket. He apologizes to Lee, and Lee thinks it's the first time he's ever heard the head of the clinic say something nice. Shay casually asks if it's possible to get a season ticket now. Lee says the season ticket will probably not be profitable for Shay now, who says he just wants to see Lee more often. It flatters Lee's ego that he decides his charisma attracts Shay. Encouraged, he agrees to go to the clinic director and sign up for a subscription. Shu hangs up the phone and apologizes to Xiao Bao in the office for keeping him waiting. He thanks Xiao Bao for bringing the patients back to the clinic, but Xiao Bao replies that it didn't cost him anything. Xiao Bao, sipping hot milk, says Shu before bringing the patients to the clinic. They examined them in a private hospital. Assistant Xiao Bao hands the report compiled by the clinic to Shi. Shay looks at the report and says that based on it, the patients are fine. Xiao Bao says their vitals are strange. Fan's stem cell activity is very high, while John's bone tissue shows that he is at least 100 years old. Shu says he doesn't know anything about John's age either, and there's no record of it in the hospital. However, when Shu arrived at the hospital, John was already there. Images from Lee's past, still graying. He peers through the window of a chamber with bars, and he sees John, who hasn't changed a bit over the years. Shu says that perhaps John is mentally normal and is just being a serene young man unlike the graying Shu. Looking at the departing limousine, Xiao Bao Shu asks the attendant if Xiao Bao believed him. He thinks he probably believed it. Looking up at the sky, he starts philosophizing again about how young people tend to be thoughtless. The picture of the sky is really very beautiful. The sky is very clear. Fluffy clouds float through the air. Somewhere far away from the healing center, far away in the mountains, a raven flies in the sky. A raven flies into one of the mountain caves flying between sharp stone ledges. Raven reports to the host that the plan with Tahina's larvae failed. He felt the waves of a level 7 demon, but that one was destroyed by unknown warriors. As the awakened founder of the genus was destroyed, all the larvae it laid were also killed. The huge crowd of cursed creatures standing in the cave warily listened to the raven's words. Level 9 demon. Alligator says in a poem that if a fly fails in a task, then so be it. The demon woman Polar Kitsune thinks the alligator has spent too much time among humans and has picked up insults from them. Leaning on a rock, she asks if they have accurate information on the number of fighters in the human city of Yanhai. Raven replies, there are 3 squads of 8th rank fighters, each led by a 9th rank fighter. The main one is a national level fighter. Kitsune pondered, a rank 8 fighter is roughly equal in strength to a level 7 demon, but it is unknown how things are with rank 9 fighters. There is a hissing sound, the demoness interjecting to ask if the Lord wants to send an 8th rank demon on a mission. Translating another hiss, she says what she wants. The king orders everyone who has reached the 8th rank to step forward. Pushing the lower ranked demons, a monkey-like figure steps forward. 3 dark silhouettes appear in front of the demon king. With a hiss of a clawed finger pointing at one of the demons, Kitsune says the king has chosen him. The chosen demon turns out to be an adamantine gorilla who violently beats his fists on his chest and has a doll hanging from his belt. Raven says he notes the smell of demons coming from ordinary people without the aura of warriors. The odors belong to a dog, a python, and an octopus that went missing. Kitsune says that humans can only have the smell of demons if the demons have taken the form of humans, or the last thought she dismisses, thinking that demons eat people, but people don't eat demons. She orders Raven to take 2 demons of rank 4 and 5 and find out what these strange people with the smell of demons are. John, drinking soy milk, sitting in the clinic next to a sleeping fan, says he resembles a mumps again. But why the one still hasn't woken up? Jean is sad. The door is opened by the head of the clinic. John cheerfully greets him. Sha says he is worried about Fan, who is still asleep. Behind his back, 2 men in yellow helmets walk into the room. Thinking about the double payment and to get out of the ward as quickly as possible, the builders install the toilet. While the head of the clinic asks John to watch over his sleeping neighbor, the builders place an entire bathroom in the room. After finishing, Shu thanks Zhang and hurriedly leaves the room with the construction workers. John, remaining in the ward, can't understand what it was. Walking away from the boarded-up ward doors, Shay says that this will at least keep the interns safe, and he'll have food delivered by drones through the window. The previous evening, at the bedsides of the sleeping Fan and Zhenya, Cyclops had informed the head that newcomers would be coming to his clinic for training. The cautious old man says he got the alert and already sent a waiver. It's too dangerous. Cyclops gestures for Shay to wait a bit with her objections. The security buff changes his stance dramatically. When he sees a check for a large sum of money tomorrow, he will start preparing. Looking at the peacefully sleeping John and Fan, he says that these 2 have achieved incredible strength. Suddenly, he offers to buy them for Cyclops. Of course, this is only an artistic exaggeration. In the real world, buying people is forbidden. Cyclops says that there have never been lunatics in the unit, and Hallie would never allow them there, but asks for time to think about it. Several rows of people lined up in front of the huge building of the psychiatric clinic came for training. Hal welcomes the teachers to his clinic and wishes them to survive, successfully complete the trial. one of the men in the squad wondering if the head of the clinic is the same Hao. In the crowd, the newcomers are discussing the scenes, one of them very excited to be taught by fighters from Sacred Duty. The head of the clinic says he has already received a notice with practice details for the newcomers and asks them to follow it. In the crowd, one of the trainees can't understand what these practice details are, but his comrade reassures him by saying that they have nothing to fear from ordinary people. Stopping at a tree, the doctor tells the trainees that their job will be to care for the sick. If they harm the sick person or the sick person, they will fail the mission. The task shocks the newcomers for a while. They stand with their mouths open. They are shocked at how simple the task is. Ordinary people can't harm them, and they themselves have no reason to harm ordinary people. Exhaling, Shay thinks that maybe he's worrying so much for nothing. The blue screen reports that Fang has gathered enough energy during anabiosis. He opens his eyes and calls out to his comrade. John joyfully rushes over to Fan, who has opened his eyes, and tells him that he has slept again for 3 days. Fang takes the soy milk packet from his friend and asks again if they are back at the hospital. John says Xiao Bao gave them a ride. John said that the head of the clinic was very worried about Fan. He should find him and tell him that he has recovered. Shu will probably be very happy. The wooden planks that were used to board up the doors are shattered to pieces. Leaving the room, John says they are going to the principal's office. Shay says to break into pairs and walk up to him, the sickened trainees forming 2 rows. The head of the clinic brings together a sick man who thinks everyone is his relative, Linlin, and an intern in a blue armband, and tells Linlin that he is his father. The intern is trying to figure out why he was named as the patient's father. Linlin runs up to him, hugs him, and starts saying that he thought his father abandoned him. The doctor hands the trainee Linlin's medical history and tells him to take him to his room. Shu introduces a young man with a yellow armband to the owner of the watch store, Boo, and says that a customer wants to buy a watch from Boo. Boo's eyes light up at the sight of the customer, and he starts to praise his watch. While the salesman shakes the intern's hand, he can't realize what kind of watch store. They're in the hospital. Shay introduces a patient who thinks he's an astronomy professor to a new student, an intern in a yellow armband. A patient asks a trainee if he has read The Shortest History of Time, and the trainee turns his head in bewilderment. The professor doesn't want to take on a student who hasn't even read sci-fi. Shay says it's the intern's responsibility to get the professor to accept him. The head of the clinic hands the dumbfounded intern the professor's medical history. John notices that people are standing in pairs in front of the head of the clinic. He decides that there is now a line to Shi. So as not to break the rules, they fan to the back of the line. Sha almost introduced Jean to the trainee, but then she hears his voice. He realizes that the special patients are out of the room. Shocked, he falls to the ground and clutches at his heart. John asks if he's okay while he himself is being stared at by a trainee. The trainee asks Jean if he is the patient she will be caring for during the trial. The one, having got over being called sick, starts to get acquainted with the intern. But then he is interrupted by the head of the clinic. The delicate old man tells the girl that she can't take care of Jean. Shay says she'll help the girl find a patient who's right for her. But she says she can take care of Jean. Apparently she likes him, and Shay gloomily notes to herself that she can't. While the head of the clinic is distracted by Jean, and the girl, one of the interns, decides that Fang is his date and goes over to say hello to him on his own. Shu is horrified to see Fan shaking the bald intern's hand. Shu gets between Lee and Fan and the trainees and starts saying that these two are not part of the assignment. They are warriors with altered bodies, and therefore too dangerous. But this only adds to the enthusiasm of the trainee paired with Fan, who says that people with an innate body possess a second rank already at birth. He offers to fight Fan. To himself, he's glad he can reach the 3rd rank right after graduation. Getting into a fighting stance and activating the Golden Dome technique, he says, to prevent John and Fan from getting hurt. The trainees realize that the headman has a high-level technique, thinking that he is the strongest among them, and think that he will show the difference between them and ordinary people. Fang asks John with surprise if this strange guy is really asking to hit him. When Fan clenches his fist, the headman disappointedly says that a normal fist can't hurt him. He wants Fan to use some innate body ability. Fan's punch easily splits the headman's golden dome. His fist slams into the headman's stomach as shards of the golden dome fly nearby. The air goes out of the bald fighter's lungs. He can't understand how this could have happened. One of the Sacred Defense Squad uses the technique 2 fingers of his hand are engulfed in purple flames. While he's doing the tech, a girl from the same squad runs up to him. She asks if the formation is finished, if the commander will be here soon for inspection. The guy replies that everything is in perfect order. The girl takes the guy by the jacket and says she's sorry they lost their 3-month vacation. He takes something out of his jacket pocket and gives it to the girl. It turns out to be a boiled egg. The girl looks at the egg and sees that a black felt-tip pen has her face on it. Thrilled, she tells the guy, whose name is Aiue, that it's very beautiful. The guy carefully peels the egg from its shell before handing it to Aiue. Accepting the gift, the girl says that since the build is complete, we'll be able to sense the energy of any creature in the clinic. She rejoices that they have nothing to worry about, all the students and patients are perfectly safe. At this time, they see the headman flying at them, launched by Fan's punch. Starasta lands at the feet of guy and girl, just as she's about to eat an egg. The egg gets stuck in the girl's throat and she starts choking. Aiue flips the girl over to let the egg fall out. Not the most effective way to help a choking person. This, within fiction, however, helps. The egg falls out of the girl's mouth. The rest of the squad who see this misunderstands and decides that Aiue has been getting violent even before his marriage. Aiue and the girl explain the situation, and the two rejoice that all is well. However, the headman lying nearby states that he is somehow not very well. While the girl treats the headman's injuries, he tells her that he was beaten by a warrior with a congenital body. Aiue says that then it's understandable why they didn't feel anything inside the build. One of the fighters decides that if a warrior made such a strike without using energy, his innate body must be very strong. At the same time, in front of the hospital, the trainees are shocked at how hard Fan hit the headman. Sha stares wistfully at the sky, hoping to catch a glimpse of the fighter that flew away. He tells Fan that while his and Jean's shenanigans were about the two of them, he could tolerate it, but now they've hurt a stranger. Fang excuses himself by saying that the headman asked him to hit him, and John nods and confirms it. Shay says that even if that's true, it's no reason to throw punches left and right. The trainees are desperate that their strength is not enough to defeat a normal human. Upset, they refuse the challenge and want to return to the academy. John calms Fan down while the bearded fighter carrying the battered elder realizes that these are the masters he saw before the fly attack. Knowing after the portrait situation how differently he and his associates perceive reality, he worries. Will they recognize the masters? Those who came closer would immediately recognize those who were able to deal with the 7th level monster. The fighter is touched because that means his perception isn't that much different. In front of the shocked staff of the clinic, the SWAT team begins to rejoice that they have finally found John and Fan. They say that if it wasn't for them, the victims in the fly incident would have been much more numerous and call the guys masters. The masters are standing in front of a group of fighters and don't understand what's going on. The bearded fighter wonders why the masters are dressed in mental pajamas. The fighters decide that the masters must have pretended to be mentally ill, like in the parables where the monks hide in the marketplace. And only the bearded fighter, with his usual skepticism, says that maybe the guys really are mentally ill. One of the fighters recalls that before they were sent on the mission, they were strictly instructed to be respectful of Shay. He decides it's because there are great masters hiding in his clinic. Everyone in the squad unanimously agrees with him except the bearded man. Shu thinks that although he's really in the hospital for a reason, John and Fang are really mentally ill. The Sacred Duty Squad believes that we can recommend John and Fan to join the special unit. The headman realizes that he was completely wasted on a fighter who defeated a level 7 demon. Shay, excited that he can get rid of problem patients, confirms that these are indeed hidden masters. He says that such talents can be recommended to their boss and even Chin himself. The fighters of the special unit are very excited about this honor to meet the great masters. John says they're going to be sent to some special unit. Fang replies that he'd rather stay home. Acupuncture Master is afraid that Shay will worry if they leave the clinic, but Shay is more worried about them staying here. Putting his hands on the guys' heads, he says that although he's worried about them, he knows their love of working out. They will have new opportunities to train in the special unit. The head of the clinic says that even though it's hard for him to let the guys go, he can't ask them to stay. As he says goodbye, he hugs the guys and says he's going to miss them a lot. The entire SWAT team was moved by the touching nature of this scene. The headman says that masters are like ordinary people. Nothing is alien to them, and the bearded fighter carrying him on his back agrees with him. He adds that since the headman was beaten up, he failed the test and will have to return to the academy. The girl paired up with Jean wonders if she still has to keep an eye on him. He happily agreed to it because the girl is good. He responds by offering to take care of the girl with acupuncture. The girl happily agrees even though Shay forbids her. During the acupuncture procedure, the girl thinks that the master will strengthen her inner energy source and she will wake up strong and beautiful. She falls asleep in the same pose on the grass with needles stuck in her head. In the distant future, her body is shown in a museum saying that the girl has fallen into sleep for 100 years. Visitors think it is the Sleeping Beauty. In the present, leaning over a sleeping woman, everyone is trying to figure out what's wrong with her. The fighters decide that the technique of the masters is too powerful for the girl, and she should be allowed to sleep, one of them noting that the girl failed the test. Since there are no more trainees left, they decide to return in a month with Fan and John as the ones who passed the test. Sitting in the branches of a tree, a demon raven finds people who give off the smell of demons. He sends a 4th-ranked bear after them to test them. Then the bird realizes it's missing something important. Too focused on Jean and Fan, she didn't notice the presence of the level 8 warrior's aura. Luckily for the raven, he has the concealment skill allowing him to hide his energy along with the demons that are near him. Bird decides to lure the warriors out and then check out the 2 strange men. In the hospital park, John shows Fan an ant that looks like the one Fan wouldn't eat. The fighters hiding behind the tree think it must be some kind of spiritual technique. By examining all living things, they penetrate its mysteries or whatever. Shu says, "The trainees are distributed, the injured are in the hospital, and the problem patients are being monitored by rank 8 warriors. Now everything should be fine. And if he doesn't, Shu can't do anything about it. He's as weak as a flower compared to the fighters." He pulls out a big flower and starts crying over it. Fan and John drink soy milk, saying it's Coke and Sprite. Fighters think it's probably the highest level of practice. The squad leader says that wizards can use their minds to learn and alter reality, and the other fighters agree that it's cool. The squad observe Fan unconscious after the acupuncture done by John. One of the fighters says that the masters help each other with acupuncture, and Fang fell asleep with infantile restorative sleep. Everyone agrees with the comrade and thinks it's very thoughtful, except for the bearded skeptic who says it's the other way around. John tells the fighters that he has been honing his technique for years and suggests they give it a try. The fighters wonder what John means by the benefits of acupuncture. The bald fighter thinks infantile sleep is not good for mere mortals. He realizes that he and his comrades are too different when they unanimously agree to undergo acupuncture. John concentratingly held the needles between his fingers, preparing to apply the half-step rotation of the universe technique. A skeptic hears the sound of a clarinet. This sound portends death. He is already saying goodbye to his comrades, who are lying on the ground with their eyes closed after the master's procedures. John is sad that something is wrong with his acupuncture technique. Standing over the sleeping fighters, he sees that there's one fighter left that he hasn't tried the acupuncture technique on. Imagination paints the fighter as death with a scythe standing behind John and beckoning him along. The soldier kneels on his knees, tears starting to flow from his eyes. He says that when he joined the unit, he knew he could die. If his comrades are dead, he will follow them. He tells John to proceed with the procedure. He's ready. Even John looks shocked by such a display of affection. All 4 fighters are sleeping peacefully on the ground after being worked over by John. Raven notices that the aura of the level 8 fighters has disappeared. While the warriors are gone, he sends a rank 4 demon, a ferocious bear, and a rank 5 demon, a rabid tiger, to test Fan and John. A blue screen informs him that Fan's self-improvement procedure has been completed. The screen reveals his new technique and tells him that there is a food source nearby. 3 patients are sitting in a hospital park talking nonchalantly about something. That's when they notice a beautiful teddy bear along with what they call a mama tiger. The tiger growls loudly at them since he is actually a male. Patients fall to the ground. They are very scared. One of them covers his ears, hoping to escape the tiger's roar. John sees the raven demon and says the bird is very ugly. Raven resents how dare they call him ugly. Isn't that a compliment for demons? As he flies away, he leaves John and Fan to the demons of the tiger and bear. The demons rush toward John and Fan with a red light shining in their eyes. Blue screen awakens Fan by using up 20 of his physical abilities to inhibit anabiosis. Tiger jumps on John, who is trying to defend himself with his arm. A blow from the recovered Fan throws the demon tiger back, blood flowing from the cursed creature's mouth. From the impact, the tiger's body flies upwards in a parabola. The demon bear looks at this with bewilderment. After hitting the ground a few times, the tiger finally landed in the grass. John is glad that Fang has come to his senses. The one wrestling with the bear asks if John thinks the bear is cute. Bear is embarrassed to be considered cute. It seems almost all demons have complexes about this. Jean says the bear is not cute, but mean and ugly. The man's words hurt the demon, literally breaking its heart. The hurtful words made the bear's soul feel as if winter had come to him. Crying, the demon bear waves its huge paw. Fan deftly grabs both paws of the demon bear in flight. Holding the bear's paws in his hands, he asks Jean, "At least the bear's paws are cute." Demon bear is waiting to be told his paws are cute. John looks at the bear and replies that the bear's paws are very cute. Embarrassed by such words, the demon bear leaps into reminiscence. The demon king asks the bear if he wants to go to the humans like the other demons. Bear says he wants it and asks permission from the king. Toth explains that people think bears are cute, but only when they're small. Raven says that no one would think a bear is cute. He and the king have been exploring humans for a long time and need someone cuter to go out to the humans. A silhouette with an umbrella approaches the box in the pouring rain. A boy with an umbrella and a backpack behind him discovers a bear cub in a cardboard box. The bear nuzzles affectionately against the boy's arm and whimpers sweetly. A child brings the bear home and hides it in his room from his parents so they don't give it to the zoo. The parents are back from behind the door of the room. Their voice comes from behind the door. The bear leaves the room. The boy tells him not to do it because his parents might see him. A boy sees from behind an open door as a bear massacres his parents. They scream that there's a demon in the house and search for their son while a pool of blood spreads outside the door. From behind the door shows the paw of the bear having finished his business. He returns to the boy's room. Mishka says in his own incomprehensible language to the boy that no one can separate them since their parents are gone. The boy swings a knife at the demon bear in desperation. He hurts the bear's eye. The bear can't understand what he did wrong. He just wanted him and the boy to be together. With a cry of "Die, demon," the boy thrusts the knife forward and attacks the bear. This cautionary tale should teach us that you can't take wild animals off the street. In the present tense, the bear is touched to be called cute again. Then something goes wrong. The bear looks down and sees a horrible picture. Fang rips off the bear's cute paws and holds them in his hands, drooling, adding that they are also fresh. Suddenly, a patient of the treatment center runs up and takes the paws, saying he knows how to make a delicious delicacy out of them. Fang Zhang and the stunned bear watch as the self-appointed cook carries the demon's paws into the kitchen. The cook says he'll call Fan and Jean as soon as the paws are done. Feeling cheated, the bear attacks the humans despite his wounds. Fan promptly strikes the demon bear with a fist punch to the stomach. The bear freezes for a while with its mouth open and blood spurting out of it, and heads for a flight high into the sky, narrowly missing a raven flying by. Lying on the ground, the bear complains to the raven that the two men tricked him, called him cute, and cut off part of his body. The raven says that he is lucky to have survived. Fang pulls the tiger by the tail, asking Jean if the kitty is cute. He replies that yes, it is very cute. Raven has a very bad feeling. He thinks that the demon tiger is no longer destined to return from this battle. The tiger's soul flying out of his body realizes that the crow is about to escape. The raven demon, taking advantage of the fact that the couple is busy with other demons, actually escapes. The chef says he knows how to make a great tiger meat delicacy. The friends drag the tiger into the kitchen while his soul weeping leaves his body. The ghosts of the creatures killed by the couple reassure him, saying they are now his family. After sneaking into the kitchen, the cook pulls out a mysterious knife from the 9 heavens. It's unclear why it's in the kitchen. To the screams of terrified female chefs, he butchers the tiger's body. The soul of the tiger demon continues to cry. In heaven, what do demons do in heaven? The souls of the other demons comfort him by calling him the 5th most sacrificed Fan and John among the demons. As the tiger hugs his fellow misfits, he realizes they've been let down by cuteness. The cook, to the cheers of all, brings out the stewed bear's feet, which give off a very pleasant aroma. There is already a pile of dishes on the table. Many patients of the hospital have gathered to have a good meal. Disclaimer warns that eating wild creatures is not a good idea. They are protected by law. Female chefs complain to Shay about patients and say they can't work at the clinic unless he raises their salaries. A disgruntled Shay walks ahead, realizing that the hospital's financial health could take a big hit. They enter the hospital dining room where a feast is taking place. Opening the doors of the canteen, the hospital staff notices that something is going on there. The patients seem intoxicated. Several of them are lying on the floor. Gloomy Shy can't understand how this happened. Everyone looks worried. The old man asks John what happened to the patients. The latter has put a bear paw skin on his hands. Fang is looking at a screen visible only to him. John innocently says they were just eating a delicacy when something strange happened to the patients. Shay immediately ignites a righteous anger, frightening everyone around her. The cook immediately shifts the blame to Jean and Fan, saying that it's not his own fault. The head of the clinic knows that the chef usually prepares dishes from inedible ingredients and wonders where he got the delicacies this time. The cook says the animals were killed by Fang and Jean, but he was only cooking and not guilty of anything. Suddenly, the head of the clinic puts his hand on his shoulder and starts talking affectionately. He says he knows that all bad things are done by Fan and Zhang, but the cook is innocent, and he wants to work in the kitchen at the hospital. The chef replies that without high-end ingredients he won't work. Shay replies that they are mostly all illegal. The head realizes that from next month he will have to increase the wages of the cooks. They are very happy about such news. He tells the orderlies to call Huatian Hospital to pick up the patients who have had enough of the delicacies. Shu tells Fan and Zhan not to give the ingredients they obtain to anyone in the future. To himself, the head of the clinic wonders if he'll even be able to die his own death. The 4 soldiers of the Sacred Defense Squad wake up from the effects of the acupuncture done by Zhan. One of them remarks that it was an infantile dream inflicted by the masters. No wonder the troops slept so long. The girl notes that her skin has become smooth. The guy says he's full of energy. The bearded fighter says they missed the main point. They all went to rank 9. The fighters are surprised that regular acupuncture moved them to rank 9. Ayue tries a rank 9 defense formation and succeeds. All the fighters are delighted by this, especially his beloved. Ayue says to thank the masters for the promotion to rank 9. A mechanical bird arrives and informs that the squad is ordered to return to headquarters immediately. Ayue wonders what about the trial for the newcomers. The bird tells him that level 4 fighters have already been sent in their place. Ayue sadly thinks that he will have to postpone thanking the masters until he returns. The whole squad is anxious. As they leave, they continue to rejoice that they were able to break through to the 9th rank thanks to the help of masters. Headquarters meeting, woman says energy waves from an 8th rank demon have been detected. One of the fighters notices that immediately appeared several demons of the 7th rank, now a demon of the 8th level. It is not for nothing. The woman says he's right. If you connect all the points where the demon appeared, you'll get the root of the next point of which will be the reserve. Cyclops notes that there may be a demon camp in the preserve. The woman says it could well be a trap. The demon leaving too obvious a trail, perhaps it wants to lure out the operatives. And that's why they can't send low-ranking fighters there. The fighters report that they've all made it to rank 9. The woman interjects in surprise. Obviously, breakthroughs to rank 9 don't happen often. The fighters, smiling, say they were helped by mysterious wizards. Since there is no time for recertification, the woman simply asks Cyclops if the fighter's word can be trusted. That confirmed that the waves of energy fighters had already exceeded rank 8. They were definitely at rank 9 now. The woman says she's relieved it's probably a trap, not a demon camp. The 9th ranked fighters have a good chance of returning from the mission in full. Ayue says they're sure to return from the mission whether it's a trap or not. Cyclops thinks that the fighters will only be able to return in full strength if they don't face 2 demons above rank 9. He reassures himself that an 8th ranked demon couldn't just give away the location of the camp. It's probably a ruse that the fighters can handle. Then Cyclops realizes that the fighters have just returned from a psychiatric clinic, and the masters they want to introduce him to are old acquaintances. Arriving at the location, the squad notes that there are no demon energy waves. The place doesn't look ominous. One of the fighters walking through the park bumps into something soft. His face passes through a transparent barrier, which surprises the fighter, but he can't realize what it is for a few more seconds. Water Barrier is a 9th rank demon's innate ability that can hide waves of demon energy. On the tablet targets start to appear, the system says that a lot of demons of high ranks are detected. The strength of the squad is not enough for the battle. The squad realizes this place is a demon camp after all. Realizing that the forces of their opponents are many times greater, the squad decides to retreat. They're running through the park hoping they can escape. But then a shard of ice pierces the tablet, and the fighters realize they've been discovered. At HQ, they lose the Sacred Defense Squad signal. The sensor in the tablet was destroyed. A 9th-ranked polar kitsune demon appears over the heads of the fighters, surprised that the humans managed to find the camp. She says she underestimated the humans. The squad realizes that this is a rank 9 demon with an innate body. They can't handle her. But Water Barrier is an innate ability of another 9th rank demon, so Kitsune isn't the only one here with such a high rank. Kitsune says they have found the camp, but they can't get out. She rains sharp ice shards down on their heads. The bearded fighter applies the Golden Bell defense technique. A protective sphere appears over the squad. Sharp ice spears slam into her and shatter against her golden defenses. The medic uses a 6-fold recovery technique. That's when another demon, a rank 5 iron-billed woodpecker, descends from the heavens. With its powerful beak, the bird crashes into the sphere and cracks begin to run down the sphere. Ayu uses the purple lightning technique while roasting the demonic bird. But then a whole flock of such birds appears, all of them flying towards the sphere. The woodpecker attack is intensified by a new wave of ice shards from the sky. The bearded fighter is struggling to maintain his defensive technique. The medic girl who heals him realizes he won't last long. Finally, the weakened warrior spitting out blood with his mouth is defeated. The defense is shattered. Through the gap in the defense, demon woodpeckers and ice shards fly at the fighters. One of the demons is a few centimeters away from the fighter's bald head, weakened after using protection. But then the cane of another squad member rips the entire pack of demons apart. Miraculously rescued fighters sit among the golden shards of the protective dome. Polar Kitsune pivots in midair to dodge the cane blade of the demon-killing woodpecker. As the blade flies towards her throat, she thinks that the fighter who used this technique is really strong. Flying away from the blade chasing her, she thinks that the power of people at rank 9 is really very great. Finally, the blade slams into a tree and literally blows it to splinters as pieces of wood fall from the sky. The fighters join forces to apply the bipolar lightning technique. A purple protective sphere begins to form around Ace. Polar Kitsune uses the ice spear technique and throws it at Ace. At the last moment, Ace sees a piece of sharp ice flying toward him through the gaps in the sphere that has not yet closed. Before he has time to do anything, he sees Aya Xiao rush to stand between him and the spear and cover the guy with his body. Xiao's body is pierced by a long shard of ice in front of the loved one she saved. Asa holds her dying lover in her arms, asking if she is in pain. Ta replies that she doesn't, taking no pains to snuggle up to her lover one last time. In her last breath, she creates a technique for maximum recovery. AHE tells the head of the squad that his equipment won't last long and that he and the wounded Hu should leave. The head put forward 2 fingers and was performing the portal technique when another bird flew up to the protective barrier. He turns to Hu and tells him to leave. He is very exhausted. Xiao Xiao applies the maximum recovery technique on Hu and Chapter. Hao can't understand why she did it. The head yells for Ace to get into a defense formation sooner. But he explains that the technique needs to be energized from the outside. If he enters the portal, will collapse. In addition, Xiao Xiao is already at her limit. Ace is unable to hold back her tears. He tells the comrades to pass everything on to the head and the others. As Hu and the squad leader disappear in the portal technique, Ace says they will be comrades again in the next life. 4 demons, a leopard, a mantis, and a wolf, run at the protective sphere where Ace and Xiao Xiao are. As the demons attack the half-destroyed sphere, the guy tells the girl that he never told her he liked her. Ta catches him saying he just said it. She heard it all. Ace thanks Xiao Xiao for supporting him and inspiring him from the beginning. A giant titanic centipede of rank 6 begins to attack the sphere. Xiao Xiao says she did all this because Ace is sincere and sweet, and she liked watching him smile. Before the sphere collapses, Ace, continuing to hold Xiao Xiao in his hands, uses a destructive technique. She blasts Ace and Xiao Xiao along with many demons. Polar Kitsune, looking at the result of the technique, can't understand why people aren't afraid of death. Somewhere nearby, outside the battlefield, the portal technique is activated. A blue circle appears on the ground. Hu and the head of the special team who escaped from the demons appear in the circle. The head says they have to hurry, they have to inform command. Hu sees the chapter trying to attack a strong demon. He uses a defense technique. A golden barrier appears between the head and the demon, which instantly collapses under the demon's foot. It seems the demon is very strong indeed. The demon's foot strike throws the head and Hu a few meters away. They crash into a tree and fall to the ground. There is a trail of blood on the tree. A demon approaches them. From the characteristic hissing, you can tell that the Demon King is in front of them, his silhouette resembling a cockroach. The cockroach monster turns out to be a demon of national rank. Standing over his defeated opponents, he continues to hiss. Roach puts his foot over the head at this time, whose body pours a golden glow. He does the technique of strengthening his body and takes the cockroach in a restraining embrace. Ha! Yells that the chapter needs to hurry up and run away. Long, he can't hold the demon back. The head replies that the demon's power is much higher than Kitsune's before he doesn't even have the strength to move, but he thinks to himself that it's not important. If it wasn't for the breakthrough to rank 9, he wouldn't even be able to attempt the last technique. The head is enveloped by wind currents. Hu realizes that the head is using a technique from which there is no return. Wanting to help, he creates a strong striking technique and punches the demon in the face with all his might. The blow, however, has no effect. The demon is too strong. The Cockroach King spectacularly kicks Hu in the stomach. He flies into the air. Slamming into a tree nearby, Hu breaks it with his body. Leaning on his cane, the head continues to create his latest technique. The wind dances around him like a brush on a piece of paper. Chapter flashback. He is in a cemetery with Hu and some boy standing by 2 graves. The boy tells the older relative that it's time for them to go back, who replies that he knows it. The child continues that he is scared every time Hu goes on a mission in case he doesn't come back like the boy's mom and dad. Their son was a baby when they died. He doesn't want the chapter to suffer the same fate. Orphan says he will not stop the head, but hopes that if he decides to die, he will remember that there is a man waiting for him.